Chapter 765. Multicolored energy was dispersing. Accompanying the throbbing of the Taoye's heart, it continuously surged outwards. Everyone was stunned by Bu Fang's actions. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Taoye's heart was about to fuse with Bu Fang. Fusing with the heart of an ancient spiritual beast would bring unimaginable benefits. Who knew? He might even obtain the bloodline of a divine beast and obtain the legendary power of the bloodline. The power of the bloodline. That was the most precious thing in the world. Normally, the power of the bloodline of a divine beast was extremely precious and rare. Obtaining even a little bit of it would be a huge stroke of luck. However, this person in front of them was actually willing to give away such a stroke of luck. Xiaoya and Hua were sitting on the high platform. The two little Lolitas were swinging their soft, white legs. Flowery tilted her head, nuzzling Xiaoya. Her face revealed a surprised expression as she looked at Bu Fang. There seemed to be a unique charm that flashed in her eyes before disappearing. This human actually rejected the fusion of the Taoye's heart. It should be known that this was something that many people yearn for even in their dreams. Bu Fang's bandaged hand grabbed onto the throbbing heart. His face was incomparably pale, and fatigue could be seen in his eyes. The Taoye's heart was already halfway fused with the Taoye's heart, yet it was forcefully pulled out by him. This was a huge blow to his mental state. Furthermore, he had used his surging mental energy in his spirit sea to forcefully crush the spirituality of the Taoye's heart. At this moment, Bu Fang was incomparably exhausted. All he wanted to do was to return to his room and lie down comfortably on his bed to sleep. However, he was not done with his business. The Taoye's heart was still struggling and beating. Before the fusion was completed, it seemed as though it was about to break through the void and leave. However, Bu Fang's eyes were much colder. The spirituality of the Taoye's heart was definitely up to no good. Although there were many benefits to fusing with the Taoye's heart, his entire body might be controlled by the Taoye's heart. To Bu Fang, that was something that he would never allow to happen. System, if I really fuse with the Taoye's heart, what will happen? Bu Fang tried his best to suppress the drowsiness in his mind as he asked the system. The system was silent for a moment, then it opened its mouth. The Taoye's heart is the heart of an ancient divine beast. Once it is fused with the Taoye's bloodline, the host will become extremely powerful. Furthermore, the host's growth will not be limited by the system. What are the disadvantages? Bu Fang asked. After fusing with the Taoye's heart, the host's mind might be affected by the Tao Tai. Furthermore, the host's lifetime achievements would be limited. Being limited by the Taoye's heart, it would be even more difficult to become the god of cooking. Wanting to take that last step would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The failure rate is 99%. The system said coldly and sternly. The mechanical voice echoed in Bu Fang's mind, causing Bu Fang's body to gradually turn cold and stiff. The next moment, Bu Fang let out a long breath. As expected, nothing was as good as the original. Bu Fang suddenly rejoiced in his heart. I am me, the best me. Bu Fang was silent. In the next moment, his gaze landed on the Taoye's heart, and the corners of his mouth curled up. With a thought, black smoke curled up, and the black turtle constellation walk appeared in front of him. Placing the beating heart into the black turtle constellation walk, Bu Fang planned to keep the walk. Roar! The ground trembled, and cracks appeared continuously. A thick arm stretched out from the ground and slammed fiercely on the ground, causing the ground to collapse. It was as if a terrifying existence was about to awaken from its slumber. Hua straightened his body, and his eyes stared at the crack. He stared at the powerful existence that had crawled out. The triflower snake eyes narrowed as it stared at the crack. Amethyst Elder's eyes turned, and he retracted his gaze from Bu Fang's body. The Taoye's heart was not devoured, and this made Bu Fang heave a sigh of relief. As long as the Taoye's heart was not devoured, he still had a chance. If he could fuse with the Taoye's heart and refine the bloodline of a divine beast, his cultivation would definitely break through. He would ignite another divine flame, and he would rise to the next level. he would be able to obtain a place in the upcoming events. Initially, he had wanted to smash that troublesome puppet into smithereens. However, another figure appeared and blocked his attack. Were there so many annoying ants nowadays? Amethyst Elder's eyes turned, landing on the handsome young man in front of him. With a single glance, his heart trembled. This young man did not seem to be ordinary. His eyes were as deep as the pitch-black night sky. His pitch-black hair hung loosely, like a sharp spear that could tear the void apart. "Who are you?" Amethyst Elder asked coldly. His gaze landed on the pitch-black charcoal in the other party's hand. What kind of divine weapon was that? How could it block his attack? Hades Era's face was filled with melancholy. He did not want to make a move, but he could not allow this fellow to smash that lump of metal into pieces. After all, that lump of metal was Bu Fong's personal bodyguard. If he could save it, he might be able to exchange it for a few more chili strips from Bu Fong. Hades Era finally understood that he was not suited to make chili strips. The chili strips he made were like a brick. Other than being inedible, they could be used for anything else. Bu Fong was still the best to be able to make such fragrant chili strips. Imagining a chili strip going in and out of his mouth, Hades' nostrils flared, and a dazed look flashed past his eyes. "You can't destroy this little lump of metal," Hades Era said, covering half of his face with one hand. The corner of Amethyst Elder's mouth twitched. Where did this fellow come from? Could he speak properly? He sucked in a deep breath. Amethyst Elder's leg was as fast as lightning. He wanted to kick this person away. However, very quickly he was dumbfounded. This was because the moment he raised his leg, he was hit by the black brick in the hands of the handsome young man. He was completely suppressed. What kind of divine tool was that black char brick? Amethyst Elder's heart was filled with bewilderment. Roar. However, no matter what kind of divine tool it was, if it wanted to stop him from obtaining the Taoye's heart, then it had to die. Amethyst Elder let out a long roar, and a terrifying aura erupted from his body. In the next instant, he punched out hundreds of times. Every punch boomed, causing the void to tremble. Hades Era's hair fluttered in the wind, and the brick in his hands moved quickly. A block again. Boom, boom, boom. Amethyst Elder punched out one last time, and his figure retreated several steps in the void. Every step he took caused the void to tremble. His bulging muscles were constantly trembling. "You're courting death." Amethyst Elder's anger surged, and he roared. His purple hair fluttered in the wind. Hades Era's hand shook, and the black chili strip spun once in his hand. He copied Bu Fong and twirled it. Then, Hades whistled. In the next instant, his figure disappeared from his original position. Boom! Amethyst Elder felt his vision go black. Then he was hit by a huge force, and his head tilted to the side. At this moment, the air seemed to become extremely quiet. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Saint Daughter Zi Yun even raised her hand to cover her eyes. "Brother Ha, when you hit someone, don't hit their face. Furthermore, you hit this Saint Daughter's father's face in the distance." Bai Lian Tian and Great White were also dumbfounded. They did not know what this young man was doing. Was he courting death? He actually dared to use a brick to hit Amethyst Elder's face. Even though this was just a puppet of Amethyst Elder could still feel the pain of being slapped in the face. In the distance, many people held back their laughter. Of course, there were also people who could not hold back. Emol Yoji's chest was exposed, and he directly laughed out loud. The dignified Heavenly Spring Holy Land sect master-level figure, Amethyst Elder, was actually slapped in the face by a young man. This was such an interesting thing. If this matter spread to the entire Hidden Dragon Royal Court, it would definitely become a joke after a meal. Amethyst Elder slowly raised his head, and the light in his eyes flickered. A terrifying aura slowly surged out. "You dare to hit my face?" Amethyst Elder raised his head, looking down at Hades Era as he coldly said each word. Hades looked at the pitch-black chili strip in his hand, then looked at Amethyst Elder, who was like the calm before the storm. A faint smile appeared on his gloomy face. Boom! Amethyst Elder's head tilted to the side again. This time, his entire body staggered a step back. Amethyst Elder was dumbfounded. Everyone else was also dumbfounded. What happened? What the hell happened? That guy. How dare he? Of course, some people had seen Hades's terrifying strength, so they did not find it strange. However, no matter how strong Hades was, Amethyst Elder was even stronger. A person's reputation was like a tree shadow. Within the hidden dragon royal court, many people were incomparably respectful towards Amethyst Elder. However, it was precisely this kind of demonic, godlike figure that was slapped in the face by someone with a brick twice. Saint Daughter Ziyin covered her face. She did not want to watch anymore, but Lin Tian and Great White also laughed out loud. Facing such a comical scene, the two of them could not help but laugh. Hades' era weighed the chili strip in his hand. He actually felt that it was really easy to hold in his hand. With a brick? No, with a chili strip in my hand. The world is mine. The anger on Amethyst Elder's body surged, and it was as though he had turned into a roaring purple dragon. You deserve to die. At this moment, what Tao Ye's heart? What breakthrough? All of that was thrown aside. Regaining his face was the most important thing. Thus, Amethyst Elder raised his head and roared at Nether King Erha. Roar! Bang! What are you roaring for? Why are youngsters nowadays so violent? Hades' era casually slapped the chili strip on Amethyst Elder's face. Amethyst Elder retreated a few steps. I'm slapping you. What are you going to do about it? Bang! Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang. Amethyst Elder wanted to resist, but every time he gathered the energy in his body, the brick would land on his face. He could not even block it. Gradually, everyone's laughter disappeared. Amethyst Elder's grievance was real. Every time that brick was swung, it would cause Amethyst Elder's aura to collapse this young man. No, that brick was really not ordinary. Could it be a divine weapon that did not appear in this world? Some people seem to recall that this brick was brought out by this young man from the land of inheritance. Could it be? Bang! Amethyst Elder's head swelled up, and flames of anger surged within him. His figure shook, and he instantly retreated far away, increasing the distance between him and Hades' era. His eyes were sharp, and his killing intent soared to the heavens. Humiliating me, Amethyst Elder. I must kill him. Bang! In the distance, a violent tremor resounded. In the next instant, within the 9 steps of culinary arts, a huge figure instantly soared into the sky. Broken rocks filled the sky. Everyone looked at that figure, and they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. That huge figure's chest was empty, and rainbow-colored chains hung down from it. The heart in his chest was actually dug out by someone. Chapter 766. Everyone was stunned. They stared at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. It was a 3-meter-tall giant with a head full of thick, black hair. The muscles on his body were like that of a horned dragon, filled with explosive power. The cloth on his body was torn, and there was a huge hole in his chest. That hole penetrated through his body, and rainbow-colored blood vessels hung down like chains. The chains that extended from the Tao Ye's heart were actually these blood vessels. The blood vessels broke, and one by one, they drooped down, with energy gushing out. Roar! The giant roared, and half of his body emerged from the crack of the 9 steps of culinary arts. His face was as thin as a match, and he looked like a bag of bones. His entire body looked ferocious, and the skin on his body stuck to his muscles. His blood vessels were bulging out. He looked extremely terrifying. This was originally a giant that exuded a terrifying aura. Waves of energy surged into the sky, and sand and rocks flew everywhere. The giant's eyes were filled with savagery. He roared and stared at Bufong, letting out a loud roar. Bufong clutched his chest, and he grabbed the Black Turtle Constellation Walk with one hand. Within the Black Turtle Constellation Walk was the throbbing Tao Ye's heart. From the looks of it, this Tao Ye's heart originally belonged to this giant. However, the Tao Ye's heart should belong to the Tao Dai. Why would it appear on this giant's chest? Bufong stared at the giant's face carefully, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He could not help but recognize this person. It was similar to the light figure from before. Obviously, this giant was the light figure from before, the one who recommended the Taoye's heart to Bufong. He was also the one who schemed against Bufong. If not for Bufong's miraculous encounter, he would have long been sucked dry. Thus, when he thought of this, Bufong did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for this giant. If not for this giant scheming against him, Bufong would not have plucked the Taoye's heart from his chest. The identity of this giant was naturally extraordinary. Many people seemed to have guessed it. Their eyes flickered and they sucked in a breath of cold air. Chu Changsheng was bewildered, standing at his spot. Looking at the giant, his eyes were shivering. This giant was the personal guard of the first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. Many people recognized this iconic figure. Back then, the first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony had killed the Black Tao Tai, sealed the White Tao Tai, established the Valley of Gluttony, and suppressed many holy lands of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. This giant was the right-hand man of the Valley of Gluttony's master, the peerless expert of the past. Had it actually deteriorated to such a state? Furthermore, he actually coveted the Taoye's heart. He actually wanted to transform his own heart into the Taoye's heart. The Taoye's heart was the inheritance of the Valley of Gluttony. It was controlled by every generation of the Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. It could strengthen the Valley Master's cultivation, heal his injuries, and increase his culinary talent. It could be said that the Taoye's heart was the best inheritance. However, at some point in time, the inheritance of the Taoye's heart was severed and disappeared. From then on, the Valley of Gluttony began to decline. No one would have thought that all of this was caused by the hero who had founded the Valley of Gluttony. However, Chu Changsheng could also guess that if it wasn't for the Taoye's heart, this giant would have long been ground to dust by the passage of time. However, this still could not get rid of the sin of coveting the Taoye's heart, which led to the decline of the Valley of Gluttony. The giant's ice-cold eyes instantly locked onto Bufong, who was floating in front of him. He could feel the aura of the Taoye's heart. Hand over Taoye's heart. The giant opened his mouth and let out a roar. His voice trembled, causing the entire space to tremble. Bufong coldly looked at the giant. If it wasn't for this giant scheming against him, how could he have snatched the Taoye's heart away? The corners of Bufong's mouth curled into a cold smile. He raised his hand and pointed at the giant. Then, with a flip of his hand, he kept the Taoye's heart. After losing the aura of the Taoye's heart, the giant went berserk. He stretched his neck, raised his head, and let out a wail. That wail was filled with sorrow and resentment. In the next instant, a terrifying aura emanated from the giant's body. Rumble! The giant raised his hand, hovering above Bufong's head. It was as if he wanted to smash Bufong into pieces. Without the Taoye's heart, the giant's body would quickly decay. Without the nourishment of the Taoye's heart's life force, he would quickly die because his life force was completely exhausted. He didn't want to die. He had occupied the Taoye's heart for so long, all for the sake of survival. However, today he had no choice but to awaken. Roar! Die! Ah! The giant howled, and his howl was filled with indescribable sorrow. This sorrow affected the crowd, and many of them felt a sense of sorrow. This was a kind of power. This giant could actually casually release a power that could affect one's state of mind. It was extremely terrifying. Bufong's face was pale, and his body was swaying slightly. He had overexerted himself. Facing that sky-covering palm, his body seemed to be unable to move. However, he wasn't afraid. He had the invincibility of the vermilion robe, and he could block one move. However, after one move, how could he block a second move? Thinking about this, Bufong felt a slight headache. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, this palm landed with a loud bang, and the air became stagnant at this moment. The huge pressure caused the giant boulders to crumble. Buzz! Just as Bufong's brows were furrowed, a figure suddenly appeared beside Bufong, and a small hand grabbed onto Bufong's shoulder. With a swoosh, the figure disappeared on the spot. In the next instant, the figure appeared beside Xiaoya. Xiaoya hugged onto Bu Fang's thigh, and her eyes were closed as she leaned her head on it. She was filled with enjoyment. Bu Fang patted Xiaoya's head. He knew who had saved him. It should be Hua, who had been sticking to Xiaoya. Indeed, beside Bu Fang, Hua's figure floated in the air. Her triflower snake eyes were filled with solemnity and anger. Hua's appearance was rather cute. Her hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she wore a golden dress that revealed her plump legs. Her small round face still had baby fat, and there were two small golden horns on her head. Bu Fang couldn't associate this cute little girl with the violent seven-colored sky devouring python. However, at this moment, Bu Fang felt that he shouldn't be concerned about these things. Instead, he was concerned about the giant who had lost the Taoye's heart. This giant's strength was extremely terrifying. Every move he made would cause the sky to be filled with ruins. He was howling, and that howl made many who heard it cry. Of course, those who were truly mentally strong would naturally not be affected by this aura. Following his howl, many people walked toward the giant with tears streaming down their faces. They were affected by the giant, and their minds were affected. They cried as they walked. It was as though they had seen something tragic. Suddenly, as those who were slightly weaker walked closer to the giant's body trembled. The giant's head of jet-black hair swayed, and a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes. He raised his hand, and with a slap, he caught a few figures. Grabbing these figures, he stuffed them into his empty chest. Those experts were jolted awake. As they were stuffed into their chests, the rainbow-colored chains on their chests seemed to come alive, and they wrapped around these figures. A terrifying suction force was produced, and these people were sucked dry. Everyone who was affected was jolted awake, and they let out cries of fear. This time, they were really scared to the point of peeing their pants. Those experts who were sucked dry had no more blood, vitality, or life force. They directly turned into ugly human jerky. Boom! The giant seemed to have tasted the sweetness. He crazily shifted his target to those who were running away. A moment later, he slapped again and again. Grabbing figures, he stuffed them into his chest, as though he wanted to fill the hole in his chest. Chu Changsheng felt so cold. How could the protector of the Valley of Gluttony become such a terrifying existence? He had led to the destruction of the Valley of Gluttony, and now he was as brutal as a savage beast. Many experts had died. Facing this giant, under its terrifying pressure, they couldn't run far. They all turned into human jerky on their chests. After being sucked dry, they were thrown away by the chains, falling on the ground and shattering. In the distance, Mo Liuji and the others took in a breath of cold air. At his peak, this giant was in existence at the sect master level with the divine flame ignited. But now, he had become a dried corpse, sucking the essence of experts. He was the culprit who had led to the destruction of the Valley of Gluttony. Mo Liuji's eyes flashed. The heavenly secret Holy Land was known to know everything in the world, but that was under the control of Granny Mo and the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign's heavenly secret star compass. How could Mo Liuji and the other disciples know such secrets? Their star compass couldn't calculate it all. Even if it could, it would be a strenuous and unrewarding task. Hence, Mo Liuji was also very curious about such secrets. At this moment, Amethyst Elder didn't care about the giant. His eyes were fixed on Hades Era, who was holding a brick and smashing his head until it was swollen. His murderous aura was all concentrated on Ha. White Shark and Lientian's eyes flashed. White Shark cared about the shrimp ancestor that had been turned into Xiao Bai's mount. At his peak, he was on par with the Black Dragon King. He was the overlord of the Endless Sea region. Now, after being destroyed, he was in such a pitiful state. He felt that he needed to do something. If the shrimp ancestor obtained it later, it would remember him and give him enough opportunities. Hence, White Shark wasn't in a hurry to snatch the Taoye's heart. He was the same as Lientian. They had condensed their divine altar, but they couldn't ignite their divine flames. Their goal this time was to obtain the Taoye's heart. It could help them ignite their divine flames and reach the divine spirit realm. However, there were too many unforeseen events this time. White Shark found a shrimp ancestor. With the shrimp ancestor, why would he still need the Tao Ye's heart? Hence, White Shark's eyes were filled with passion. He carried his meat knife and walked to Xiao Bai's side. He looked at the shrimp ancestor and grinned foolishly. Xiao Bai's gray eyes flashed. In the next instant, he swung his rod. Such an ugly smile. He definitely wasn't a good person. Bai Liantian's body swayed, and her eyes flashed. The appearance of the giant was completely out of her expectations. She was injured by the Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. However, that Valley Master had disappeared for a long time. Originally, she wanted to come back to take revenge. However, she encountered the appearance of the Tao Ye's heart. If she could obtain the Tao Ye's heart, she would be able to ignite her divine flame. Naturally, she couldn't resist such a temptation. Hence, she wouldn't give up on the Tao Ye's heart. Bai Liantian's eyes narrowed. Energy lotuses appeared around her body. The petals danced in the air, and her hair fluttered in the wind. Her killing intent was overflowing, and there was a hint of beauty in it. Her gaze was locked on a Bufang. The Tao Ye's heart was with this kid. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed. That was because after the giant had replenished enough energy, he turned his body. His huge hand swept out once again, and he grabbed at Bufang's position. He wanted to grab Bufang like those experts who were sucked dry by him. An oppressive gust of wind blew over, and Bufang's hair fluttered in the wind. Hua's small hand pressed on Bufang's shoulder. Her triflower snake eyes started to spin, and energy started to dissipate from her body. However, just as she was about to transform into the seven-colored sky-devouring python, Bufang raised his hand and patted her head. He rubbed her head. "You're just a kid. Stay here obediently. Leave the fighting and killing to that lazy dog." Bufang rubbed Hua's head, causing Hua's body to stiffen. Her triflower snake eyes turned sluggish. As soon as Bufang's words fell, the space in front of him started to tremble violently. In the next instant, a crack appeared in the void. A pitch-black, unadorned netherworld ship slowly sailed out of it. Chapter 767. A netherworld ship tore through the void. When the pitch-black hull of the ship emerged from the crack, it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Bufang naturally saw the netherworld ship. Not only did he see it, but he also had a premonition in his heart. Hua had originally planned to make a move, but after Bufang patted his head, all the energy he gathered dispersed. He was a little dumbfounded. His small face was filled with doubt as he looked at Bufang. It was as if he didn't understand the actions of this human. Many people's eyes shrank as they looked in the direction of the crack in the void. The moment the netherworld ship appeared, dense nether energy spread out. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Amethyst Elder, who was facing off against Hades' Era, and by Lin Tian and the others, who were in the distance, tensed up. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. This was because they were very familiar with this nether energy. It was actually the aura of the netherworld creatures. Netherworld ship. That was a netherworld ship from the netherworld. From the crack in the void, a netherworld ship actually slowly emerged. What exactly was going on? The creatures of the netherworld could appear in the hidden dragon continent so brazenly? Rumble. Energy trembled, and the void cracked. The netherworld ship emerged from the void, causing an intense storm. The storm swept out, causing a dense pressure to spread out. Hades' Era, who was holding a pitch-black spicy strip in his hand, seemed to have sensed this aura. He immediately turned his head to look and saw the netherworld ship in the void. His eyes slightly lit up. This familiar netherworld ship caused the corners of his mouth to involuntarily curl up. Oh, an old friend was about to appear. Hades' Era's heart shook. The netherworld ship was controlled by the netherworld woman. Now that it appeared here, it meant that the netherworld woman had appeared here. Of course, it was very possible that the lazy dog would also appear. Hence, Hades' Era didn't continue to target Amethyst Elder. Instead, he turned his body and looked at the netherworld ship. The netherworld ship soared into the sky, emitting a monstrous nether energy. Its unbridled appearance caused many people to be extremely shocked. Roar! The giant roared, and the muscles on its body bulged. It opened its mouth and let out a heart-wrenching roar. The sound waves caused by the roar reverberated and spread out in all directions. The giant's heart was empty. Energy and vitality gathered there, constantly providing energy to the giant. The giant had an instinctive hostility towards the underworld ship. It let out an angry roar, intending to shatter the underworld ship. On the deck of the netherworld ship stood a graceful figure. That figure had a beautiful figure and was incomparably tall. Her black dress fluttered in the wind, exposing her fair and straight legs to the air, attracting the attention of countless people. This was a peerlessly beautiful figure. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, causing everyone to involuntarily be intoxicated. This was the figure of the netherworld ship. Nethery's eyes were indifferent. Her pitch-black pupils scanned the void, and soon they landed on Bufong. She saw Bufong, and Bufong saw her. Bufong was expressionless. You pouted and nodded at Bufong. Hua Er's eyes narrowed as she stared at the netherworld woman. Her body emitted a golden energy, and she was extremely vigilant. She looked at you, who was standing on the netherworld ship, then at Bufong. She took a deep breath. Many people were attracted by Yu's beauty. Even by Lin Tian, who had always been confident in her beauty, was stunned when she saw you. However, lotus flowers quickly floated around her. These lotus flowers revolved and emitted a vast amount of energy. Although Yu was beautiful, the sense of danger she felt was extremely intense. Moreover, this was a netherworld creature. Furthermore, according to Bai Liantian's intuition, this woman was definitely not an ordinary netherworld creature. The giant roared. He raised his hand and continued to slap Bufong. He wanted to turn Bufong into minced meat with a single slap and take back the Taoyia's heart. However, the netherworld ship roared and collided with the giant's body. The giant's body was forced back by the collision. Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her eyes were completely shrouded in darkness. Nethery's slender and fair legs strode forward. She soared into the air, intending to compete with the giant. However, Yu quickly stopped moving. This was because a lazy figure was slowly climbing out of the underworld ship behind her. It was a dog, a black and fat dog. Bufong looked at the Lord Go, who had stood up from the netherworld ship. The corners of his mouth curled up, and his tensed heart heaved a sigh of relief. He did not think that this lazy dog would actually appear. The giant roared, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness. He did not have a good impression of you and the fat dog in the sky. Vitality circulated in the giant's chest. Soon, colorful energy gushed out from the giant's mouth and nose. He raised his fist, and it seemed as though the air would explode. His palms swept out, intending to slap Nethery to death in the void with a single slap. As for the fat dog, the giant opened his mouth, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. His eyes were filled with desire. He would let this fat dog become his nourishment. It was so fat, it would definitely provide him with a rich life force. You slightly furrowed her eyes, and her hair fluttered in the wind. She was holding 3 strands of dog fur in her hand, and when the giant's palm pressed down on her, she gently let out a breath, and the towering peaks on her chest suddenly rose up and down. Then, you ignited the 2 strands of black dog fur that were wrapped around her arms. At this moment, Nethery's power had become extremely formidable and enormous. Boom! The giant's palm suddenly came to a halt. It had been obstructed. You raised one of her hands, using one palm to stop the giant's palm. With a loud boom, the wind howled. The giant's powerful palm was easily blocked by you. After igniting 3 strands of dog fur, you felt that the hidden dragon continent's restriction on her was much weaker. That was why Yu's strength had increased a lot. In the distance, Chu Changsheng looked as though he had seen a ghost when he saw the netherworld ship and the fat dog on it. The Lord Go appeared. Of course, Chu Changsheng knew how strong that black dog was. Wasn't it the black dog that guarded the store? How could it appear here? The Lord Go stood up, and the fat on his body shook. A moment later, the Lord Go opened his mouth letting out a yawn. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, he walked out of the warship with elegant cat-like steps. It was a dog walking like a cat. When everyone saw it, a strange look appeared on their faces. This mangy dog, Hades' era, held a spicy strip in his hand as he smacked his lips. It was actually roaring. The nether energy soared into the sky, making many people feel a little pressured. That unbelievably beautiful woman had used one palm to stop the berserk giant. It was really miraculous. After the Lord Go finished yawning, his eyeballs slightly turned, and in the end, they fell on the giant. The 3-meter-tall giant looked really huge. After Nethery blocked one of his palms, he raised his other hand and clasped his palms together. He wanted to slap Nethery into minced meat. However, you disappeared in an instant, blocking it. Amethyst Elder's eyes shrank, and the energy on his body instantly burst out. In the next instant, his entire body crossed the void, instantly appearing in front of Hades. He didn't care about other things first. He had to kill this guy who used charcoal to hit his head. That was for his dignity. The terrifying purple energy lingered. Amethyst Elder felt that this puppet's body had reached its limit, and it could no longer bear more of his energy. Boom! A fist blasted out, smashing towards Hades' era's position. Hades' era seemed to be stimulated by the strong wind. He turned his head to look and saw Amethyst Elder rushing towards him. Hades was instantly unhappy. He was about to go and greet that mangy dog. Boom! Amethyst Elder was instantly stunned. His fist, which contained a terrifying amount of energy, actually didn't cause any damage to Hades' era. Instead, it was blocked by Hades' hand. Waves of energy dissipated, and Era tilted his head, looking at Amethyst Elder with a smile that wasn't a smile. Amethyst Elder was stunned. In the next instant, he felt a wave of pain in his head. That pitch-black and hard object ruthlessly smashed on Amethyst Elder's face, causing him to be dumbfounded. You little brat, you actually dare to resist. What are you looking at? I'm going to hit you. Hades smashed another chili strip. He suddenly felt that it was quite easy to hit him. Amethyst Elder was directly smashed onto the ground, and his body exploded. This scene was something that no one had expected. The appearance of a powerful netherworld creature. Valientian's eyes flashed. She suddenly felt that this matter wasn't simple. Was in the void, a dog slowly walked with cat-like steps. In a short while, it floated in front of the giant. Lord Go raised his head, calmly looking at the giant. Then, facing the ferocious giant, the dog's mouth cracked open. Woof! The dog's bark was deafening. That sound was like thunder in the sky. In just an instant, the giant was forced back several steps by this dog's bark, landing on his butt. A strong wind blew, and the giant was instantly stunned. Everyone's hearts trembled. In the next instant, Lord Go calmly looked at the giant, slowly raising his dog paw. Chapter 768. It was Hwa's first time seeing such a unique fat dog. When the fat on its body shook, one could almost hear the sound of meat colliding with each other. Moreover, as a dog, it actually walked like a cat. Was there something wrong with this dog? Hwa's triflower snake eyes spun, glistening. But no matter what, Hwa still recognized this dog's power. That dog gave her a sense of urgency, which was an incredible thing. It should be known that Hwa was a 7-colored sky-devouring python, an ancient divine beast. Although it was still in its infancy, its inheritance was still there, and its vision was still there. Its strength was still very strong. How could a top-notch divine beast like her be frightened by a dog? Hence, to be able to make her feel pressured, it meant that this dog was definitely not ordinary. Bufong rubbed Hwa's head, which made the latter even more confused. Was this dog the lazy dog that Bufong mentioned? Xiaoyu was very happy, cheering on the spot. Although Lord Go looked fierce, Xiaoyu still liked to stay by Lord Go's side. In the Cloud Mist restaurant, Xiaoyu's relationship with Lord Go was also not bad. She would occasionally run to Lord Go's side and secretly pull on Lord Go's fur. Although she did not pull it off, the little girl still felt very happy. Now that she saw Lord Go's fat jiggling, Xiaoyu was very excited. Little Black, you can do it. Slap this big guy who bullies big brother to death with one paw. Xiaoya clenched her fists, straightened her body, and shouted. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. He stretched out his bandaged hand and patted Xiaoya's head. These two little fellows. Yu's figure floated over and slowly landed beside Bu Fang. Her slender and fair legs were straight and full of charm. Her face was a little cold. As soon as she landed beside Bu Fang, Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at Hua. This little girl actually made you feel a sense of danger. Hua tilted his head and looked at Yu. Their gazes collided in the air, sparks flashing. The triflower snake eyes rotated, and a bright light seemed to burst forth. Are you all right? Yu glanced at Hua, then turned her head and looked at Bu Fang. She asked in a cold tone. Bu Fang looked calm. He glanced at Yu and nodded. I'm fine. Then, they fell into a brief silence. The two of them did not speak. They raised their heads at the same time to look at Little Black, who was yawning and raising its paw in the void. The giant roared, and the muscles on its body bulged, as if it was squirming. The colorful blood crown under its muscles bulged, and a terrifying energy circulated within it. Chu Chongqing's body trembled slightly, and his eyes shrank. This black dog, it was not afraid of the giant's aura. Previously, he thought that this dog was lucky to kill the almighty expert from the heavenly spring holy land. Now, it seemed like this black dog was even more unfathomable than he had imagined. He seemed to have underestimated Bu Fang's power. Rumble. The entire sky was filled with pressure. Energy gathered in the void, and as Little Black raised its paw, waves of energy swirled along with the wind, forming a vortex that slammed down on the giant. The giant's mouth opened wide, and a terrifying look appeared in his eyes. He needed the Tao Ye's heart. Anyone who obstructed him from obtaining the Tao Ye's heart had to die. He hated it. He was about to complete the fusion with the Tao Ye's heart, but halfway through, Bu Fang appeared. He wanted to absorb Bu Fang's flesh and life force to complete and awaken the Tao Ye's heart. He wanted to fuse the Tao Ye's heart with him, allowing him to achieve immortality. However, he did not expect that the Tao Ye's heart would be snatched away by that kid. That was why the giant was filled with hatred. He had promised the first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony that he would protect the Tao Ye's heart, but he could not resist the temptation. He dug out his own heart, wanting to fuse with the Tao Ye's heart. He caused the Valley of Gluttony to decline day by day, and he almost caused the Valley of Gluttony's inheritance to disappear. He had done so much for his own immortality. Once he succeeded, he would be able to come out and lead the Valley of Gluttony back to the peak of the hidden dragon continent. He had calculated everything perfectly. However, no matter how much he calculated, he failed to calculate that a human would be able to snatch the Tao Ye's heart from his hands. Furthermore, the human would not be sucked dry by the terrifying suction force of the Tao Ye's heart. Now, there was a dog in front of him who wanted to stop him from taking back the Tao Ye's heart. This was unforgivable. Crack! Crack! The giant let out a long roar, and his voice pierced through the heavens. The entire palace seemed to tremble at this moment. The muscles on his arms bulged, and then a huge wiggling occurred. In the next moment, a carapace appeared and covered his arms. That arm became extremely thick, and it looked incomparably ferocious. The giant gathered all the life force in his body to form this punch. Although this punch was many times weaker than when he was at his peak, it was already not bad for the giant to be able to do this. This punch, he wanted to kill this arrogant dog in front of him. A mere dog, crush him into pieces, and turn him into his nourishment. Roar! The giant roared. The aura of the entire space seemed to have been suppressed by a little at this moment. That punch seemed to have caused the void to crumble. Many people were incomparably shocked, and their bodies trembled. This punch of the giant already had some of the power of his peak. It had already reached the power of a divine spirit realm expert who had ignited his divine flame. There was almost no one present who could block this attack. Amethyst Elder could not, Bao Liantian could not, and even Great White could not. Of course, Hades, who was holding a pitch-black chili strip in his hand, was not too sure. This person gave Amethyst Elder and the others a feeling that he was unfathomable. At this moment, Balientian's beautiful face turned cold. In the next instant, she narrowed her eyes, and the energy lotus around her started to revolve. Then it shot towards the Nether King. Hades, who was holding the brick and the chili strip, smashed it down on Amethyst Elder's face. Amethyst Elder's face was filled with despair. This was because Amethyst Elder realized that no matter how hard he tried to block, he could not block this brick. Just when Hades was about to smash Amethyst Elder with the brick, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. This sound caused the void to tremble. Numerous lotus flowers appeared, surrounding Hades' era. Pink petals floated down. Hades' era was stunned. He raised his hand, and a petal landed on his palm. In an instant, it melted like ice-cold water. Amethyst Elder, stop playing around. Let's end this battle quickly. Let's take advantage of the fact that this giant has wasted all of his vitality to unleash this punch of a divine spirit realm expert. We have to act quickly and snatch the Taoyia's heart before the giant recovers. Balientian stepped on the lotus as she said solemnly. Amethyst Elder was dumbfounded, and tears streamed down his face. At this moment, he really wanted to shout, "Which of your eyes saw me playing around happily?" This brick was King poisonous. There was no way to dodge it. I'll help you deal with this fellow. We can work together. Don't you need the Taoyia's heart? Let's work together and snatch the Taoyia's heart. I only need you to promise me a favor. Balientian's hair fluttered, and the silk that was wrapped around her body also floated up. Her graceful figure was fully displayed. Amethyst Elder's eyes seemed to light up, and his heart was moved. Good. Bang. What's good about it? You brat, you actually want to resist. Just as Amethyst Elder finished saying good, his vision turned black. That smelly brick came smashing down once again, causing him to stumble back a few steps. He fell on his butt in the air, shaking his head. He was incomparably dumbfounded. At this moment, he felt like crying. Impudent. Balientian's eyes narrowed, and her mental energy surged out. In the next instant, the tens of thousands of lotus petals that gently floated down turned into sharp flying knives. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tens of thousands of petals flew toward Bufong at an extremely fast speed. As they rotated, the air seemed to tremble and shatter. A buzzing sound rang out, and the petals flew toward Bufong. They completely surrounded Hades. Numerous energy lotuses revolved in the air, releasing countless petals. Balientian's red lips curled up, and a charming smile appeared on her face. Amethyst Elder, you're getting more and more backward. This fellow is so weak, and yet you played with him for so long, Balientian said as she stepped on the lotus. Amethyst Elder patted his swollen head, and he raised his head to look at Balientian. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, in the end, he didn't say anything. Balientian was very excited. She didn't think that she would succeed so easily. That clown who beat up Amethyst Elder didn't look like much. Could it be that Amethyst Elder's reputation was undeserved? It seemed like she really had to consider whether or not she should cooperate with Amethyst Elder. Everyone was secretly delighted by Balientian's actions. Almost everyone looked at her with a strange expression. Or rather, they looked behind her. There, a figure was floating in the air. It was a man, and his hair fluttered in the wind. He held a pitch-black brick in one hand, and his eyes were filled with melancholy. Nether King Erha sighed. Why did youngsters nowadays like to stir up trouble so much? He had no enmity with this woman in the past, and there was no enmity between them. However, this woman actually wanted to kill him. It was really depressing. Youngsters nowadays are so mischievous. Hades' era said calmly. Balientian's body instantly froze, and her entire body was in a mess. She hurriedly turned around and saw the melancholic Hades' era. Erha's eyes were filled with melancholy as he met Balientian's gaze. In the next instant, bang, a brick smashed down. Balientian's scream was heard, everyone's heart skipped a beat. The corner of Amethyst Elder's mouth twitched. In his heart, he felt stifled by Lien Tian, the palace lord of the wavering light holy land. Rumble. In the distance, the giant's palm, which was covered in a dense shell, collided with the fat dog's dainty paw, which was waving in the air like a cat. There was a huge disparity in strength between them. No one could bear to see the black dog's blood splatter on the spot. After all, that was the giant's fist, which was close to the divine spirit realm. Even the void almost collapsed from the impact. No one could block it, let alone a dog. Everyone held their breath. Saint Daughter Zi Yun covered her mouth. She couldn't bear to see such a tragic scene. Saint Daughter Zi Yun still felt that the chubby black dog was somewhat cute. It would be a pity if it died just like that. A palm and a claw silently collided with each other. At the moment before the collision, the Lord Go opened his mouth and yawned. Tears flowed out of his eyes. He was really tired. Then an explosion occurred. The terrifying scene caused everyone's eyes and pores to shrink. Chapter 769. A huge palm covered in carapace collided with Lord Go's exquisite dog paw. An explosion erupted in an instant. However, everyone's eyes widened as they felt disbelief. That was because the scene before them seemed to be different from what they had imagined. The giant bellowed. Other than his arm, all the vitality in the giant's body seemed to rush into his arm. The carapace seemed to come to life, turning jet black as the patterns on it shone brilliantly. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Steam rose from the carapace on his arm. That steam was filled with spirit energy, and as he punched, an even more powerful force burst forth. A punch within a punch. This was the giant's punch. It was almost invincible and unstoppable. From everyone's point of view, there was no comparison between a harmless fat dog and this ferocious giant that had punched out a punch that was close to the divine spirit realm. That black dog would definitely be smashed into pieces by this giant's punch. Of course, only a few people who had seen Black's strength would know how strong this fat, harmless dog was. Nether King Erhan knew that regarding this mangy dog's strength, no one should be clearer than him. Bufang also knew that his trust in Lord Go was unparalleled. Shaya also trusted him. In her heart, Blackie was invincible. Boom! Lord Go yawned. The dense hot air was filled with spiritual energy and instantly enveloped him. The giant's arm seemed to be emitting rumbling sounds. Boom, boom, boom. Behind Lord Dog, the entire ground trembled and a strong gust of wind howled. Crushed stones flew everywhere, and a huge fist shadow was blasted out. Such a terrifying punch. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Bufang stared at the battle in the void, and his heart trembled slightly. You watched with a serious expression, but there was no trace of worry in her pitch-black eyes. She didn't need to worry about her lord. Hades' era wasn't interested in Black's battle. His current interest was to hold that brick-like spicy strip and teach those youngsters. Crack! A cracking sound rang out. This sound was very abrupt, like the cracking of gravel. Many people shuddered. Raising their heads to look, they saw numerous cracks appearing on the giant's carapace-covered arm. The giant's eyes widened. His skinny face revealed a ferocious expression of disbelief. This fist of his possessed the power to shake mountains. Even a mountain peak would be flattened by this fist of his. But at this moment, the giant's heart was trembling slightly. The white smoke dispersed. Then, the scene that appeared made everyone suck in a breath of cold air as they looked at each other in dismay. Everyone was shocked. The black dog was unscathed. Its black fur was still as clean and tidy as ever, without a speck of dust on it. The mouth of Lord Go curled up into a playful smile as he looked at the giant. The giant's eyes widened as he stared at his shell-covered arm. His arm was densely covered in cracks. The cracks started to spread from his palm and quickly spread to his entire arm. A moment later, the cracks began to spread. The shell began to spin and shatter. Crack! Crack! The giant roared in fear. Every strand of his hair seemed to pierce the illusionary void. The carapace that densely covered his arm rotated and shattered. Very quickly, It turned into densely packed fragments that scattered all over the ground. The giant raised his head. His face was ferocious as he roared. He was frightened, angry and frightened. The force of the rotation caused his entire arm to be twisted. His eyes were bloodshot. As he coldly looked down, he saw the playful look in the black dog's eyes. That spinning force would strangle him to death. That dog wasn't an ordinary dog. It was definitely a divine spirit realm dog that had ignited its divine flame. That divine spirit realm dog. The giant was filled with hatred. If he were at his peak, how could he be afraid of that fat dog? At that time, any of his punches would be much more powerful than the one he had just used. That spinning force continued to spread. The shell scattered. His muscles were crushed, and the colorful veins on his body spun. Energy overflowed everywhere. Surprisingly, the other hand caught the hand that had exploded. Then, he opened his mouth and roared. There was a tearing sound. The giant's arm was actually torn off by himself. That scene shocked everyone. Even though his arm was torn off, the spinning force continued. The giant's figure moved sideways with a rumble, and only then did he manage to avoid the invisible whirlwind-like rotating force. Everything quieted down. Nobody dared to breathe loudly. They were bewildered as they looked at that scene. In the air, a fat dog was standing elegantly. It raised one of its paws, which was slightly tilted at a 45-degree angle. Boom! A loud sound echoed. A giant arm fell to the ground. It was broken, and the muscles inside were completely destroyed. Even the bones were broken. The giant panted hard, echoing in the entire area. It was hard for people to breathe. That black dog, how could it be so terrifying? Many experts trembled. Looking at that scene, they didn't know what to say. Emol Yoji's face was also filled with fear. He leaned against the wall, completely ripping open the clothes in front of his chest. He panted heavily, sweat dripping from his forehead. That black dog, with one paw, it could break a punch that could shake a god. Could it be that this dog was also at the divine spirit realm? Looking at the netherworld ship, which covered the sky and emitted nether energy, Emol Yoji suddenly felt a dark haze shrouding his mind. He recalled that scene again. That huge eyes that looked like a house, that terrifying existence that stooped down as if it was looking at its food, that was the legendary great netherworld existence. Even the saint sovereigns of the Holy Lands were afraid of it. The chubby and somewhat adorable black dog in front of him actually gave him this kind of feeling of fear. Moreover, that thick nether energy that soared to the sky. This black dog was definitely a netherworld creature. The hidden dragon continent had such an existence. A netherworld creature that could be compared to the divine spirit realm was the doomsday of the continent that Granny Emo had mentioned really coming. Emol Yoji's body shivered slightly. He hammered his chest, trying to calm his breathing. A moment later, he tremblingly raised the star compass in his hand. He glanced at the Lord Go, then at the star compass in his hand. Then he gritted his teeth. His mental energy surged, as if there were dots of starlight surrounding his body. Swoosh! However, as soon as Emol Yoji's mental energy started to deduce, he felt as if he was hit by a heavy hammer. His entire face paled, and he spurted a mouthful of black blood. His head felt like it was being pricked by needles. Damn it! Had he touched the taboo existence? Although the heavenly secret Holy Land was said to be able to calculate everything in this world, and the cultivation technique he cultivated could also deduce everything, if the person or the thing he deduced exceeded the limit of his deduction, or even touched the taboo in the legends, he would receive a terrifying backlash. The star compass directly shattered. After flashing for a while, it dimmed and disappeared. Emol Yoji's entire body slumped to the ground, feeling weak. In the void, the Lord Go's fur slightly moved. Instantly, he turned his head to look around in surprise. He had just realized that someone was peeping at him. However, the power of the person who was peeping at him seemed to be a little weak. To dare to peep at him, that person must have a lot of courage. The Lord Go yawned, feeling a little bored, indifferently looking at the panting giant who was kneeling in the distance. He once again stepped forward with his elegant cat-like steps. The void trembled as he strode forward. What's the use of fusing with a trash like the Taoyia's heart? Why don't you stir-fry it and eat it? The Lord Go's magnetic voice reverberated in the void. It reverberated in everyone's ears. In the next instant, a strange expression appeared on everyone's face. Bufong was also a little speechless. The corners of his mouth twitched as he looked at the Lord Go in the sky. If the heart is stir-fried, it will become a little old. Actually, it's not bad to use it for stewing. If you add some spirit herbs and stew it, the soup will be very fragrant and nutritious. Bufong rubbed his chin as he said seriously. Everyone's expression became even more strange. Could this man and dog not talk about the cooking of the Taoyia's heart in such a serious manner? That was the Taoyia's heart, not a pig's heart. That was the Taoyia's heart, which could help people break through to the next realm. It could even help an existence at the fake divine spirit realm ignite the divine flame on their divine altar, allowing them to become a sect master. Using the cooking method of a pig's heart to talk about the Taoyia's heart, wasn't it too much of a waste? The giant's life force was disappearing rapidly. He was as thin as a stick, and the life energy on his chest had been completely consumed. His eyes revealed a trace of fear in the face of death. You can't kill me. I was left here by the first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony to protect the inheritance. You can't kill me, the giant said fearfully. His voice shook the void, causing it to tremble unceasingly. In the distance, Chu Changxing's face turned pale. Hearing the giant's words, he turned his head and spat. This fellow still had the cheek to say that. If this giant didn't have the selfish heart to fuse with the Taoyia's heart, how could the Valley of Gluttony have declined? How could the inheritance of the Valley of Gluttony have been severed for so long? The previous Valley Masters of the Valley of Gluttony were all killed or disappeared by the saint sovereigns of the Great Sage. All of this was the giant's fault. He still had the cheek to talk about the first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. Lord Go strode like a cat as he hovered above the giant's head. His clear eyes looked down at the giant, who was shivering in fear. The first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. What kind of toy is that? Lord Go's magnetic voice rang out. The giant's eyes shrank, and he opened his mouth to roar. The first Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony was a peerless expert who shook the hidden dragon continent and suppressed the hidden dragon royal court. He was an invincible existence among the saint sovereigns. Kill me. The Valley Master will never let you go. The giant widened his eyes and roared, his face ferocious. The ruler of the divine spirit realm? Lord Go's nose twitched slightly. In the next instant, the exquisite dog paw lightly waved again, tapping on the giant's forehead. What Valley Master? What does that have to do with me, Lord Go? If you dare to come, eat one paw of Lord Go. If one paw isn't enough, then two paws. Lord Go's magnetic voice echoed. Then, the giant's body stiffened. Boom! With a loud explosion, the giant's body suddenly exploded. Chapter 770. That dog's paw lightly landed on the giant's head. In that instant, the giant's 3-meter-tall body and giant head split open. At the moment of death, the giant's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He was filled with resentment, anger, and he wanted to tear everything apart. To die just like that, he felt extremely wronged. That dog's paw was like the pressure of heaven and earth. The giant wanted to block it, but he didn't have the strength to do so. If he was at his peak, how could he be bullied by a dog like that? His anger surged, and he coughed out blood. However, very quickly he lost all his thoughts. His entire body was completely shattered by that dog's paw, turning into a pile of debris on the ground. Buzz! An angry howl resounded through the air. A transparent white figure rushed out from the pile of debris on the ground, trying to escape. This was the divine soul of a divine spirit realm expert. Only by igniting the divine flame would one have the chance to reach the divine spirit realm, allowing one's divine soul to solidify and leave one's body. However, once the physical body was destroyed, The divine soul that lost its sustenance would be quickly worn down by the power of heaven and earth. The giant's divine soul would not live for long. Many people looked at the divine soul, and their eyes were filled with complicated emotions. This giant was in existence at the divine spirit realm when he was at his peak, but now he actually died under the paw of a dog. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't sullen. The Lord Go looked at the white divine soul that had turned into a baiguang, which was trying to escape from this world, with an indifferent look in his dog's eyes. The giant's divine soul roared as it sped away. Its speed was extremely fast, and in an instant, it was about to escape from this space. The Lord Go couldn't be bothered with this divine soul. However, just as the giant's divine soul was about to leave, it seemed to be filled with resentment. It actually turned its head and roared at the Lord Go. "You will regret destroying my physical body. The first Valley Master will definitely avenge me." The giant roared, and his face became extremely distorted. His face was filled with malevolence. The hatred on his face had reached its peak. He was filled with hatred. Why do you think of using the Taoye's heart to seduce that kid? If it wasn't for that, he, who possessed the Taoye's heart, would have been able to obtain enough life force to return to this world. At that time, he might be able to suppress the hidden dragon royal court and achieve the same glorious results as the first Valley Master. But now, it was too late for regrets. Everything had collapsed like an illusion. All of his preparations had gone to waste. The Lord Go raised his eyes slightly and glanced at the divine soul of the giant that was roaring at him. Letting out a slight yawn, the Lord Go opened his mouth, and his magnetic voice once again burst forth. "Originally, I didn't want to destroy your divine soul, but since you want to die, then die," Lord Go said. Everyone was slightly stunned. In the next instant, everyone's pupils shrunk as a chill instantly enveloped their bodies. Woof! The black dog in the void suddenly opened its mouth wide, its sharp teeth shining brightly under the light. Woof! A dog's bark rang out. In the next instant, the sound waves rolled out, bringing with them a surging gale. In the sky, the face of the divine soul of the giant contorted instantly. He was incomparably frightened. He turned around and wanted to escape. However, very quickly, he realized that the dog's bark had shaken his body, causing his divine soul to be completely fixed in the void. He couldn't move at all. That huge dog's mouth covered the sky as it approached. Then, under the terrified gaze of the giant, his divine soul was just swallowed by that huge dog's mouth. The dog's mouth became smaller, but it quickly regained its calmness. The Lord Go's mouth twitched, as if he was disgusted. "It's been a long time since I've eaten a divine soul. It's a little disgusting. Sweet and sour ribs is still the best," the Lord Go muttered. Thump, thump. Many people's legs were a little weak, and they directly fell on their butts. Their faces were a little cold. That dog was simply a monster. How could it even eat divine souls? It was a divine soul. It was an existence that represented the divine spirit realm. When one cultivated to the pinnacle, one would have a 9-step soul ladder and condense the divine altar. Only then would one have a chance to ignite the divine flame. How much effort would one have to put in to reach such a realm? However, it couldn't even withstand a single bite from that black dog. That dog was simply an existence that made people feel like they were living in a nightmare. Mo Lyoji's pupils shrank, and he panted heavily. His body trembled uncontrollably, and his entire body was drenched in sweat. Chu Changsheng and the others looked at the dog in the void with complicated and fearful eyes. Hades' era naturally wasn't surprised by this scene. With the Lord Go's claws, not to mention one giant, even if there were 10 of them, they would still be like chickens and dogs. As Hades thought about this, he swung the pitch-black brick-like spicy strip in his hand once again. It drew a beautiful arc in the air, and it smashed into Bai Liantian, who had just struggled to get up from the lotus. Bai Liantian went crazy. Her beautiful figure disappeared, and all that was left was a shrew's cursing. She was so angry. A woman's appearance was the most important thing, but this fellow in front of her actually used that dirty charcoal-like thing to hit her face. More importantly, she couldn't even dodge it. Why was her life so tragic? Bai Liantian screamed, and she was about to go crazy. Great White, who was watching from afar, felt his heart tremble. He touched his fair face, then revealed his sawtooth-like teeth and smiled happily. Fortunately, he didn't provoke that brick-carrying fellow. One look at that fellow, and he knew that he wasn't ordinary. Even though he was carrying a brick, he still looked so majestic. It was better for him to follow his shrimp ancestor. If he hugged the shrimp ancestor's thigh tightly, he would be able to occupy a place in the endless sea. This time, if he hadn't angered the Black Dragon King, he wouldn't have escaped from the Black Dragon Palace and come to the Hidden Dragon Continent. Moreover, for an inheritance and a chance, he even took the risk to enter the royal court's holy land. Moreover, it was the Valley of Gluttony, and he risked becoming an ingredient of the Valley of Gluttony to snatch a chance. However, he encountered an even better chance, and that was the shrimp ancestor. Although the Tao Tai was an ancient divine beast, it wasn't a sea divine beast. Hence, it didn't affect Great White much. If he had to choose between the Tao Ye's heart and the shrimp ancestor, Great White would definitely choose the shrimp ancestor. After all, they were from the endless sea. When a fellow villager met a fellow villager, his eyes were filled with tears. Hence, he made the wise decision to hug the shrimp ancestor's thigh tightly. Xiao Bai's gray eyes flickered, and he looked at Great White suspiciously. Great White opened his sawtooth-like mouth and smiled warmly. Great White tried his best to radiate kindness, but, without saying a word, Xiao Bai waved the war god's stick over. That fellow's smile was so ugly, and one look, and one could tell that he wasn't a good person. Bai Liantian fled. She couldn't bear this kind of grievance anymore. Lying on top of the dark green lotus, she swayed as she escaped. Amethyst Elder's eyes twinkled, and hot air exhaled from his nostrils. He glanced at the Nether King, who was holding the brick, and then at the black dog, who was strutting its cat-like steps in the air. The corners of his mouth twitched. His figure turned, and he directly tore open the void as he fled. Two powerful netherworld creatures. Amethyst Elder was very clear that this clone of his might not even be able to defeat the broken giant, let alone the black dog that had smashed the giant apart with a single swipe of its paw. Hence, he chose to escape. It wasn't easy to refine a powerful clone, and Amethyst Elder didn't want to waste it here. Before he left, he stepped into the void. Amethyst Elder's hair fluttered as he turned his head to look at Saint Daughter Ziyun. "You little girl, hurry up and leave with me," Amethyst Elder said with incomparable majesty. Saint Daughter Ziyun froze. Then she snorted and turned her head, no longer looking at Amethyst Elder. Amethyst Elder's face darkened, and his heart was filled with anger. This disobedient little girl, all of a sudden, his eyes widened. That was because the hooligan with the brick had suddenly landed beside his daughter. He reached out his hand and patted his daughter's shoulder, talking and laughing. Damn, that hooligan used a brick to hit his face, and he still wanted to flirt with his daughter. This damned thing. Amethyst Elder was enraged. One of his feet had already stepped into the void, and he hated that he couldn't rush out and fight 100 rounds with that hooligan with the brick. However, he remembered that this was just a clone, and it wasn't his real body. He couldn't defeat that hooligan, so he could only use his sharp eyes to warn Hades' era. Buzz, the void closed, and soon it disappeared. "You little kid, don't be afraid. That fellow's face is swollen, so he doesn't dare to be mean to you. I said I would bring you to eat Owner Boo's delicious spicy strips, but you haven't tasted it yet," Hades said seriously. Saint Daughter Ziyun's face was red. She covered her mouth, lying on the ground and laughing. Big Brother Era was such a good person. The fight for the inheritance seemed to have come to an end just like that. Amethyst Elder ran away, and so did Palace Master by the Wavering Light Holy Land. Great White changed sides and hugged the thigh of Shrimp. The giant who planned everything was also smashed into pieces by a dog's paw. The inheritance seemed to have been obtained, and the Tao Ye's heart also had an owner. Everything was over. Some experts weren't willing to give up. Their eyes sparkled as they stared at Bufong, wanting to fight for the Tao Ye's heart. However, When they saw the fat dog stride across the sky and land on the netherworld ship, everyone's hearts trembled. Their original covetous gazes also disappeared. That dog was truly a ruthless dog. Hence, many experts retreated. Their eyes twinkled as they quickly left the land of inheritance, which had almost turned into ruins. They were sure that they wouldn't be able to find anything good in these ruins. He was very touched. After so many years, the Valley of Gluttony's inheritance had finally returned. This meant that the Valley of Gluttony was going to rise again. The experts from the other holy lands, who were originally planted in the Valley of Gluttony, also fled this time, not staying to guard the Valley of Gluttony, because there was no longer any meaning. The Valley of Gluttony's inheritance had been inherited, and the Taotia's heart, which they originally wanted to fight for, was guarded by a terrifying black dog. They had no chance at all. Hence, they had to hurry back and report the news truthfully. The news that a powerful netherworld creature had appeared in the Valley of Gluttony shocked them even more. Bu Fong and the others walked down. The vermilion robe on Bu Fong's body emitted a dazzling radiance, and he looked as though he was taking a leisurely stroll in the park. He was very calm. Although the process this time was very dangerous, and he had almost been fused with the Taotia's heart. In the end, he had survived. Just as he had said, he didn't need to fuse with the Taotia's heart. He needed to use his own strength to continuously grow, to become the god of cooking, and to defy the heavens. Chu Changxing's face trembled as he looked at Xiaoya, who was slowly walking down. Looking at the inheritance memory crystal in her glabella, his body trembled violently. He was moved. Xiaoya was the future of the Valley of Gluttony. She was the guarantee to lead the Valley of Gluttony to shake the hidden dragon royal court. From today onwards, Xiaoya was the new Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. This old man, Chu Changsheng, greets the Valley Master. Chu Changsheng's old tears streamed down his face. When he saw Xiaoya, he immediately bowed. The moment Chu Changsheng bowed, the solemn voice of the system resounded in Bu Fong's head. Chapter 771. Chu Changsheng was so excited that he didn't know what to say. Looking at Xiaoya and the inheritance memory crystal on Xiaoya's forehead, tears streamed down his face, and his entire body trembled. It was because he was excited, because he had found hope again. Chu Changsheng was tired, but he didn't give up. He had been looking for a chance for the Valley of Gluttony to rise again. He believed that one day, the Valley of Gluttony could rule the entire hidden dragon royal court and suppress the other holy lands. However, it had been so difficult that it had almost crushed his old body. If he didn't believe in hope, he would have given up already. Facing those powerful holy lands of the royal court, the Valley of Gluttony was too weak. Xiaoya had obtained the precious inheritance of the Valley of Gluttony. Without a doubt, this little girl was the current Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. The previous Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony, who was also Xiaoya's father, had been missing for a long time. Chu Changsheng couldn't be found, and the Valley of Gluttony didn't have a master. Today, he found Xiaoya, and she had received the inheritance. Xiaoya would become the new Valley Master, and everyone would be happy. Chu Changsheng's eyes were filled with love for Xiaoya. Then his eyes shifted, falling on Bu Fong, who was rubbing Xiaoya's head. This time, the inheritance could be completed smoothly because of Bu Fong. If it weren't for Bu Fong, perhaps the Valley of Gluttony wouldn't have anything to do with the inheritance this time. Whether it was the man with the brick, the Lord Go, or Xiao Bai, these people or dogs, they all had a close relationship with Bu Fong. Without these people, the Valley of Gluttony wouldn't have any power to compete. Perhaps they could only watch the inheritance fall into the hands of those thieves. Thus, Chu Changsheng was grateful to Bu Fong. Bu Fong was a chef, and his cooking skills were excellent. Thus, Chu Changsheng suddenly had an idea. If he could keep Bu Fong in the Valley of Gluttony, it would be a good thing for the Valley of Gluttony. Thus, Chu Changsheng's eyes sparkled. He looked at Bu Fong as if he was looking at a peerless precious jade. Owner Bu, thank you for helping my Valley of Gluttony solve the crisis. I don't know how to thank you, said Chu Changsheng to Bufang. However, Bufang's eyes were a little unfocused. He didn't seem to hear Chu Changsheng's words. At this moment, Bufang didn't have time to listen to what Chu Changsheng had to say. The system's serious voice resounded in his mind. Please complete the chef challenge against the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony as soon as possible and build a branch in the Valley of Gluttony within a month. Host, please initiate the Divine Soul Realm Advancement Test within 3 days. The system's voice resounded in Bufang's mind, causing his brows to involuntarily furrow. Bufang came back to his senses. It turned out that he hadn't completed the mission yet. It turned out that he had been busy for half a day, but it was all for naught. It seemed that he had to seize the time to finish the rest of the chef's challenge. Moreover, the advancement test had to be completed within 3 days. All of a sudden, Bufang felt that he was pressed for time. Chu Changsheng felt a little embarrassed. Bufang didn't seem to hear him at all. A gust of wind blew past, and it felt as cold as a stone statue. Fortunately, Bufang's eyes moved, and his mind returned to his body. He looked at Chu Changsheng and asked suspiciously, "What did you just say?" "I want to thank you, but I don't know how to do it. I wonder if Owner Bu is willing to stay in the Valley of Gluttony?" asked Chu Changsheng. "Stay in the Valley of Gluttony?" Bufang was a little surprised. The system's mission seemed to ask him to build a branch in the Valley of Gluttony. Of course, he wanted to stay in the Valley of Gluttony. Hence, Bufang seriously looked at Chu Changsheng's eyes and nodded solemnly. "I want to stay." Chu Changsheng received Bufang's affirmation, and his eyes instantly shot out a dazzling light. He was very excited. If Bufang was willing to stay, it would be a great thing for the Valley of Gluttony. Good. The Valley of Gluttony has many things to do, but I can make the decision to give Owner Bu an elder position. Chu Changsheng clenched his fists, extremely excited. An elder position? Bufang was bewildered. He didn't seem to understand what Chu Changsheng meant. He just wanted to stay in the Valley of Gluttony and build a branch. Why did he want to be an elder? Was Chu Changsheng stupid? Moreover, what was the point of being an elder? He just wanted to open his shop in peace. What elder? I won't do it. Bufang shook his head, directly refusing. Chu Changsheng was bewildered. Why didn't Bufang want to be an elder? If he chose to stay in the Valley of Gluttony, wouldn't it be good to give him an elder position? He could even have many privileges. Chu Changsheng opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, Bufang directly interrupted him. "All right, my chef's challenge hasn't ended yet. I need to continue the chef's challenge and defeat the rest of them," Bufang said seriously, looking at Chu Changsheng. In the distance, the people around Chu Changsheng stiffened. Wen Renshang gulped down a mouthful of wine, looking at Bufang awkwardly. This fellow still didn't know when to stop. It was such a serious situation, and he was still thinking about the chef's challenge. Mu Chung and Lu Jili also looked at Bufang, a little puzzled. "All right, I don't want to say anything. Tomorrow, the rest of you can come together and directly in the chef's challenge." Bufang rubbed his chin, directly making his decision. Many people took in a breath of cold air when they heard Bufang's decision. What did he mean by "the rest of you can come together"? Was Bufang going to challenge 6 chefs by himself again? And the other 3 were special grade chefs? This was too arrogant. Each special grade chef's cooking skills were unimaginably strong. It was really difficult for one person to finish cooking under the pressure of 3 special grade chefs, let alone competing with them on the same stage. Chu Changsheng frowned, saying, "I'm afraid it's not possible. The Valley of Gluttony has many things to do. If Owner Bu wants to have a chef's challenge, he should come one by one. We can't use the Gluttony Square for a while. Owner Bu will come directly for a chef's challenge. The chef's challenge can be carried out face to face. Anyway, I have to remind Owner Bu not to underestimate the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. Each of them has their own unique skills, especially the top 3 special grade chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony," Chu Changsheng said. Then, he remembered Yenyu, the traitor who deserved 1,000 cuts. Yenyu was a member of the ancient Jade Holy Land, which had kept him in the dark for a long time. It was lucky that he didn't get the inheritance. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Come one by one for a chef's challenge? It sounds very exciting. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Eventually, the corners of his mouth rose, and he nodded. All right. Chu Changsheng was bewildered. Did Bufong really want to do it? After Bufong said that, he continued to walk forward. His palm gently patted Chu Changsheng's shoulder, then he strode forward with big steps. Nethery, on the other hand, strode her long legs and followed at his side. Xiaoya and Hua held hands, following Bufong. The Lord Go was sleeping soundly in the Netherworld ship. You had retrieved the Netherworld ship, so in the end, the Lord Go just lay on the ground, sleeping soundly. Hades' Era came back with a face full of smiles. He moved closer to Bufong's ear, wanting to ask for a spicy strip. This time, Hades had helped him a lot, so Bufong wasn't stingy at all. He gave the last spicy strip to Hades' Era. The last remaining one. Hades' Era looked at Bufong with tears in his eyes. He wanted to ask for more spicy strips, but Bufong spread his hands, indicating that he didn't have any left. Saint Daughter Ziyun, who was by Hades' side, looked at the spicy strip in Hades' hand. Was this the legendary spicy strip that Brother Ha had mentioned? It looked different from the one that Brother Ha had made. It smelled so good, and it smelled so delicious. Just by smelling the spicy strip, Saint Daughter Ziyun realized that she was drooling. Hades' Era pinched the spicy strip, sighing. He turned his head to look at Saint Daughter Ziyun with a gloomy face. Young man, it's not that I don't want to help you, but the spicy strips are limited. I'm the kind of person who will die if I don't have spicy strips. You should understand, right? Nether King Ha's gloomy eyes looked at Saint Daughter Ziyun. Saint Daughter Ziyun blushed, and she couldn't help but lower her head. Brother Ha, you're bad. Don't stare at me like that. Saint Daughter Ziyun raised her hand shyly, patting Hades' Era's arm. That tone of voice caused goosebumps to rise all over the Nether King's body. That slap almost caused the Nether King to drop his spicy strip. Damn, young people nowadays are so mischievous. Then, I will take it that you agreed. I will bring you to eat spicy strips next time, said Era. After he finished speaking, he happily pinched the chili strip and moved his nose close to it. He took a deep breath. A moment later, the spicy strip entered his mouth, moving in and out continuously. The feeling of the spicy strip rubbing against his lips caused the Nether King to narrow his eyes involuntarily. The days when I have spicy strips, I feel as though I have been reborn. So happy. He ignored Hades' Era's funny eating manners. Everybody decided to leave the road of gluttony. In the distance, Mo Liuji clutched his chest. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth as he gazed at the black dog sleeping on the ground. He took a deep breath. He turned to look at Bufong, narrowing his eyes. This fellow, is he the capable Saint Daughter's inner demon? Everything that the astrolabe had told him pointed to this young man. This young man seemed to have obtained the Taoye's heart. He could talk and laugh with so many netherworld creatures. This young man wasn't ordinary. No wonder he could become the capable Saint Daughter's inner demon. He wasn't ordinary at all. However, since he had provoked so many netherworld creatures, one day, this young man would have to pay the price. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court and the experts of the Endless Sea would not allow any netherworld creature above the Great Void Realm to appear on the Hidden Dragon Continent. Moreover, there were so many of them here. Not to mention the taboo dog, the icy beauty with long black hair. Her aura was not something an ordinary great ethereal realm expert could have. Also, the Nether King, who was walking in and out of the room while eating spicy strips, seemed to be an extraordinary existence from the netherworld. Hiss, hiss, thinking about this, Mo Liuji felt a chill run down his spine. He gazed at Bufong. Granny Mo's words about bringing the capable Saintess inner demon back were thrown to the back of his head. This fellow could only be gentle. He couldn't be violent. He didn't want to be slapped to death by that dog's paw. Yin Yu was annoyed. He slowly got up from the ground, following the crowd to leave. He felt that he had to leave. Otherwise, he would die here. When Chu Changsheng and the others came back to their senses, he wouldn't be able to leave. It wasn't because he was a traitor. He had betrayed the valley of gluttony. All of a sudden, Yin Yu's body stiffened. That was because he discovered that a fair and slender palm had appeared on his shoulder. The appearance of that palm caused his entire body to jump. Turning his head, he saw an emotionless face. "Don't hurry to leave. You're the first chef on the tablet of gluttony, right?" Bu Fong looked at Yin Yu seriously. Yin Yu was bewildered. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose, and his eyes narrowed. "Good. You're the one. Let's have a chef's challenge." Chapter 772. Let's have a chef's challenge. When Bu Fong's palm landed on Yin Yu's shoulder, Yin Yu was so scared that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. He was really frightened by that gloomy man. The feeling of his fists hitting his flesh made his entire body shiver. Now that he thought about it, he still shivered, thinking about how he, the number one chef of the Tablet of Gluttony, was beaten so badly that he had to shiver in fear. Thinking about it, he shivered. It was really shameful. However, when he turned his head and saw Bu Fong's expressionless face, Yin Yu let out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, Yin Yu suddenly felt that Bu Fong's arrogant face was really cute. At least, it was much cuter than that gloomy face. Yin Yu's eyes glanced around and saw Hades, who was grabbing a spicy strip and putting it in and out of his mouth. That fellow's vulgar movements made him curse inwardly. Chu Changxing's gaze made him shiver. Thinking about how he had used the ancient jade lock to lock Chu Changxing, he knew that Chu Changxing would not let him go. He wanted to run, but it seemed like he couldn't. "Have a chef's challenge with me," said Bu Fong. Yin Yu was being stared at by everyone, and sweat trickled down his forehead. Today, everyone knew that Yin Yu was a traitor who had betrayed the valley of gluttony. Thus, they didn't have a good face for him. As for Yin Yu, many people snorted disdainfully. Before this, they didn't really believe that Yin Yu was the number one chef of the Tablet of Gluttony. That was because the chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony had their own specialties. Compared to first-grade chefs, a special grade chef could only defeat a few more people. In the Valley of Gluttony, to become a special grade chef, one had to get on the Tablet of Gluttony. Then, one had to be in the top 10 of the Tablet of Gluttony and defeat every first-grade chef. Yin Yu's culinary skills weren't bad, and he had defeated many people. His defeat wasn't like Bu Fong, who had climbed all the way to the top in a chef's challenge. It was just a normal competition. Some people, like Wenren Shang and the others, would never seriously compete in cooking skills. Mu Cheng and the others did not have any desire for first place. During the competition, they did not bring out their specialties. Hence, losing to Yin Yu was very normal. Yin Yu rolled his eyes, looking around. Finally, his gaze returned to Bu Fong and said, "Why should I have a chef's challenge with you?" He was about to lose his life, so how could he still have the mood to have a chef challenge? What he cared about now was how Chu Changxing would deal with him. He didn't know how Chu Changxing would deal with him. Chu Changxing's eyes were cold. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Yin Yu indifferently. That kid had dared to use the ancient jade lock to lock him. The numbness he felt when the lightning struck his body made him furious. He was Chu Changxing, the great elder of the Valley of Gluttony. He was also an almighty expert. As a powerhouse, he had the pride of a powerhouse. He couldn't bear being humiliated by someone who was much weaker than him. He took a step forward. Chu Changxing's figure appeared by Yin Yu's side, giving off an oppressive aura. Yin Yu's eyes shrank. Without saying a word, he turned around and left. His face was filled with fear. However, how could he be Chu Changxing's opponent? How could he escape from Chu Changxing's hands? Chu Changxing's big hand grabbed, and thousands of energy gathered. Like a shackle, it slammed Yin Yu's entire body onto the ground. Yin Yu's body hit the ground with a bang. The ground caved in, and cracks appeared. Yin Yu coughed out blood, his eyes filled with fear. He loudly begged for mercy. He didn't want to die. Chu Changxing's eyes were cold. Suddenly, he looked at Bu Fong, his eyes slightly narrowing. Then, the corners of his mouth rose. "Don't you want to live?" "Sure. As long as you have a chef's challenge with owner Bu. If you win, I will let you return to the ancient Jade Holy Land. If you lose, then you can die. Chu Changsheng said. His words were cold. His words were incomparably cold, but when they landed in Yin Yu's ears, it was like a life-saving straw. I will. I will. I will have a chef's challenge with him. Yin Yu's eyes were filled with excitement. He didn't think that Chu Changsheng would be so arrogant. Chu Changsheng should know his ability. He was a genuine special grade chef. He also knew Bu Fong's cooking level. Although he had won a few chef's challenges, he didn't care about it. He was confident because he was #1 on the tablet of gluttony. He crawled up from the ground, and crushed stones fell. Yin Yu's eyes revealed a trace of wild joy. I will have a chef's challenge with you, Yin Yu said with a fanatical tone. Bu Fong looked at Yin Yu indifferently. The vermilion robe on his body fluttered in the wind. All right, tomorrow morning, we will have a chef's challenge. The location will be the Noodle King restaurant, Bu Fong said. In the distance, Ouyang Chenfeng was slightly stunned. In the next moment, his eyes revealed a trace of gratitude. Ouyang Chenfeng didn't think that Bu Fong's chef challenge would be held in the Noodle King restaurant. Originally, the Noodle King restaurant's business would definitely decline because of Ouyang Chenfeng's chef's challenge. If the chef's challenge between Bu Fong and Yin Yu could be held in the Noodle King restaurant, it would be a huge boost to the restaurant's popularity. It should be known that although Yin Yu's cooking skills weren't that great, there was no doubt about his identity and popularity. He was the true #1 on the tablet of gluttony. This gimmick was enough to attract a lot of people. At that time, his popularity would explode. All right, I will go and prepare immediately. Prepare for tomorrow's chef's challenge, Ouyang Chenfeng said. Tomorrow's chef's challenge. Prepare your own ingredients. The theme is dumplings. Yin Yu's eyes slightly narrowed as he looked at Bu Fong. Dumplings? Prepare your own ingredients? Yin Yu's request made Bu Fong slightly stunned. He didn't think that Yin Yu would make such a request. Bu Fong naturally knew about dumplings. He used to cook rainbow-colored crescent moon dumplings. However, if he used rainbow-colored crescent moon dumplings for the chef challenge tomorrow, Bu Fong felt that it might not be a good choice. Bu Fong also furrowed his brows. Didn't Yin Yu know that he had Tao Tai meat on him? If he used Tao Tai meat, what chance would Yin Yu have to win? Just based on ingredients alone, Bu Fong had thrown Yin Yu 10 streets away. There was no suspense at all. Of course, you can't use Tao Tai meat. Yin Yu looked at Bu Fong, his mouth cracking into a cold smile. Yin Yu wasn't stupid. He didn't want Bu Fong to use ingredients at the peak of the divine soul realm. Not to mention him, even if he searched the entire Valley of Gluttony's storehouse, he wouldn't be able to find such ingredients. Indeed, Bu Fong's heart wasn't that surprised. He nodded, then clasped his hands and left. Prepare well. I hope you won't disappoint me. If there's no challenge, it'll be boring. At this moment, Yin Yu was also fearless. Looking at Bu Fong's back as he left, he opened his mouth. He seemed to have recovered his high-spirited spirit when he was the #1 chef of the tablet of gluttony. Chu Changsheng's face gave a cold smile. He glanced at him, then ignored him. Everyone left the road of gluttony. When they returned to the Valley of Gluttony, the battle outside had reached its climax. The experts of the Holy Lands had almost retreated. Although the entire Valley of Gluttony was in a mess, at least they had protected it. It didn't fall into the hands of the hidden dragon royal court. As long as the foundation was there would be a day when they could rise again. As soon as Chu Changsheng saw the Valley of Gluttony in a mess, he hurried to bring his people to repair the Valley of Gluttony. The others also left one after another. Ouyang Chenfeng left hurriedly. He wanted to return to his Noodle King restaurant to prepare for the chef challenge tomorrow. Mu Chung and the others were also looking forward to the chef challenge tomorrow. Yin Yu walked out of the road of gluttony, disappearing shortly. He seemed to be too ashamed to meet people. Bu Fong, on the other hand, calmly brought Yu and the others to his residence. In the sky, 2 bright moons hung, emitting cold radiance. Hua stuck to Xiaoya, while Chu Changsheng found a room for the 2 of them to stay in. Xiaoya was now the Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. She was very noble, and Chu Changsheng treated her like a fragile porcelain doll. Bu Fong and the others stayed in the inn. Chapter 773. Bufang's gaze was extremely sharp. Turning his head, he saw Xiao Bai, who was spitting bubbles on Xiaopi's head. Xiaopi was a golden shrimpy, and its effects were not ordinary. If it was used properly, it would be of great help to the improvement of the taste of the dish. The bubbles that Xiaopi was spitting suddenly exploded, and its rolling eyes instantly opened. It scanned the surroundings suspiciously. Xiaobai also scratched his round head, as though he was a little suspicious of Bufang's gaze. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. He was in a good mood. Then, he ignored Xiaobai and Xiaopi's suspicious gazes and began his cooking practice. Heavenly Spring wholly landed in a dusty, secret chamber. Amethyst Elder slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of unwillingness appeared in his eyes. Dense spirit energy spurted out from his nostrils like a dragon. That long dragon danced ferociously, but quickly disappeared into the air. Amethyst Elder opened his mouth, and turbid energy spread out. His body seemed to be enveloped in a layer of fog, causing his figure to be slightly blurry. A terrifying energy spread out. Damn it, I actually failed. I still haven't obtained the Valley of Gluttony's inheritance. I still haven't obtained the Tao Yi's heart. Amethyst Elder was a little angry. As of now, he had already reached the critical moment of breaking through, and he did not have any extra energy to snatch back the Tao Yi's heart. Originally, he had sent his clone over to snatch back the Tao Yi's heart. Then, he would immediately retrieve it and help him break through his current shackles. Unfortunately, all of his wishful thinking had crumbled. Since that's the case, I can only forcefully break through. However, once I finish breaking through, everyone who obstructs me will die. A purple flame appeared in Amethyst Elder's eyes. Then, the secret chamber once again fell into silence. Yin returned to his residence. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with indignation. Why did the Valley of Gluttony's inheritance belong to that little girl? He was clearly the Valley of Gluttony's #1 chef on the tablet of gluttony. He was the most suitable person to obtain the inheritance. Yin clenched his fist and ruthlessly smashed it against the wall, causing it to crumble. Then, he took a deep breath to calm himself down. He knew that now wasn't the time to complain. Tomorrow was the chef's challenge, and that was the most important thing. His identity had been exposed, but Chu Changsheng had spared his life to prepare for tomorrow's chef's challenge. Although Yin was furious with Chu Changsheng, he had to admit that Chu Changsheng was a man of his word, since he had agreed to the chef's challenge tomorrow. As long as Yin won, he would let him leave the Valley of Gluttony safely. He would definitely not go back on his words. What he needed to do now was to ensure his victory tomorrow. Yin eyes flickered, and his hair hung down, covering half of his face. It made him look extremely sinister. Then, he walked to a corner of the room. This place was built after so many years in the Valley of Gluttony. There were many secret rooms inside, and these secret rooms were where he stored his precious ingredients. Once the secret room was opened, an icy, cold air blew out. That cold air was bone-chilling, and it spread to people's bodies, causing them to involuntarily shiver. Yin stepped into the secret room. He gently exhaled, and the air that he exhaled turned into ice beads, falling to the ground and emitting the sound of small and large pearls falling onto a jade plate. Yin's hand shook, and a ball of flame flew into his hand. The flame instantly lit up the entire secret room. This secret room was actually filled with piles of ice. These ice cubes emitted a cold air, and it was extremely cold. When the light from the flame shone on the ice cubes, it was as if it was being reflected by a crystal, reflecting all kinds of dazzling splendor. Yin's face was filled with enjoyment as he looked at this scene. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing an intoxicated smile. This place was filled with his treasures. The ingredients that he had collected for a long time were all hidden here. Portions of ingredients were sealed within these ice cubes. A kitchen knife appeared in Yin's hand. That kitchen knife seemed to have two colors. One side was emitting a knife light, and the other side was incomparably black, as if it could even absorb light. This was the famous knife that Yin Yu had, the shadow chopping knife. Holding the knife with one hand, he fiercely stabbed into the ice cubes, and a gap was instantly cut open in the bright ice wall. True energy surged into the shadow chopping knife, and in the next instant he suddenly exerted force. The cracks on the ice wall became more and more concentrated, and soon it was densely packed. A ripping sound rang out. The shadow chopping knife cut open a wide gap on the ice wall. Yin Yu's eyes were burning with passion as he stepped into the ice wall. A white lotus that looked as if it was made of ice floated within the ice cave. Cold air spread out, and specks of cold light lingered around the white lotus. After collecting for so many years, this is the only 8-petal snow lotus I've collected. With this as an ingredient, I don't believe that little chef can defeat me. Looking at the 8-petal snow lotus slowly lingering in the cold air, Yin Yu's eyes instantly revealed a burning passion and excitement, as well as an indescribable confidence. In tomorrow's Chef's Challenge, he would definitely win. The next day, the weather was clear and sunny. The sun was bright and resplendent, sprinkling down from the sky and covering the ground. It was somewhat gentle and somewhat comfortable. The Valley of Gluttony was still busy. Everyone was working together to restore the Valley of Gluttony. However, other than restoring the Valley of Gluttony, there was another big event that was going to happen today. That was the original Chef's Challenge had not ended, and it was still ongoing. The location of today's Chef's Challenge was actually the Noodle King restaurant, which was opened by the defeated Noodle King, Ouyang Chenfeng. Many people arrived at the Noodle King restaurant early in the morning, preparing to reserve a good spot. On the second floor of the Noodle King restaurant, there were already 2 stoves set up. These stoves were made of bronze, and they were extremely luxurious. There were many exquisite carvings on them. Obviously, for this Chef's Challenge, Noodle King Ouyang Chenfeng had made sufficient preparations. He actually took out such an exquisite stove. However, it was normal for him to take it out. After all, the 2 parties in this Chef's Challenge were not ordinary people. One was the Valley of Gluttony's Tablet of Gluttony's first rank. Whether or not it was fake, this rank was the real deal. The other was the young chef, Bu Fong, who had never lost a Chef's Challenge until now. Today, in the Valley of Gluttony, almost everyone knew the young chef Bu Fong. His achievements had become the topic of many people's leisure time. With his own power, he had fought against 3 chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony's Tablet of Gluttony, and the most important thing was that he had won the Chef's Challenge. After taking away the kitchen knives of the 3 chefs, the 3 chefs felt what real failure was. The appearance of such a legendary figure naturally attracted their gazes in an instant. Chef Ouyang. Special Chef Yin is here. Ouyang Chenfeng, who was pacing back and forth at the entrance of the kitchen, heard the voice of the restaurant's apprentice. He instantly narrowed his eyes, then turned around and walked toward the entrance. Although Yin Yu's actions made him despise him, the other party had come to his restaurant to participate in the Chef's Challenge. He still had to give him some face. Ouyang Chenfeng welcomed Yin Yu. However, Yin Yu only coldly snorted. He did not look at Ouyang Chenfeng at all. In his eyes, Ouyang Chenfeng's cooking skills were just trash. His entire person was trash too. Yin Yu clasped his hands, his entire being incomparably confident. It was as though he had a card up his sleeve for this Chef's Challenge. He really had a card up his sleeve. When the surrounding crowd saw the handsome and tall Yin Yu, a look of admiration appeared on everyone's face. Although Yin Yu had betrayed the Valley of Gluttony, he had been the Tablet of Gluttony's first rank for so many years. He still had some prestige and fame in the entire Valley of Gluttony. Many people knew him, and they knew how terrifying he was. That kid hasn't come yet. Could it be that he's afraid of losing, so he doesn't dare to come? The corners of Yin Yu's mouth twitched. He glanced at Ouyang Chenfeng, then at the majestic group of people downstairs. That group of people did not include Bu Fong. This group of people were basically chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony. As chefs, they were naturally very interested in this Chef's Challenge. Ouyang Chunfeng furrowed his brows. This Yin Yu, who had torn off his mask, was even more arrogant. Moreover, he was fearless. Could it be that he did not know about Bu Feng's cooking skills? If he was careless, he might really fail miserably in an easy task. Suddenly, everyone let out a cry of surprise. That was because from afar a majestic group of people was coming over. Bu Feng wore the vermilion robe, calmly walking. Behind him was a huge metal puppet. Many people had witnessed how powerful that puppet was, so they did not dare to offend it in the slightest. As for the two sides, it was you and the rest. Xiaoya and Hua were holding hands, following behind Bu Feng. Their faces were filled with excitement. Although Xiaoya was now the Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony, with Hua around, he had no way to make Xiaoya obediently stay at the place where the Valley Master should be. Yu's long black hair hung down, and she strode with her slender and fair legs, following beside Bu Feng. When they reached the first floor of a Noodle King restaurant, Bu Feng instinctively raised his head. He happened to see Yin Yu, who was leaning against the window, looking at him with a playful expression. "You brat, are you ready to lose in what position?" Yin Yu grinned, looking at Bu Feng with a smile. Lose? Bu Feng's eyes were indifferent. The concept of losing did not exist in his dictionary. He could not lose. Once he lost, he would lose everything. This was something he would never allow. Hence, Bu Feng could only fight and work hard. Glancing at Yin Yu, Bu Feng then stepped into the Noodle King restaurant. Ouyang Chinfeng's face revealed a joyful expression. He quickly went downstairs and brought Bu Feng up. Yin Yu looked at Ouyang Chinfeng's expression. The difference in treatment between the two was too big, and it made Yin Yu's heart turn cold. However, thinking of his trump card this time, the coldness on his face became even more intense. When he, Yin Yu, defeated the dark horse, Bu Feng, this group of people would know how powerful a special grade chef was. Yin Yu sneered. Then he walked back to his stove. Bu Feng nodded at the crowd, then turned around and walked to his stove. The two of them looked up, and their gazes collided in the air. There seemed to be lightning flashing. The theme of our chef's challenge this time is dumplings. I hope you won't disappoint me, Yin Yu said coldly. After saying that, he waved his hand, and the shadow chopping knife appeared in his hand. His mind flickered. An ice-cold chill instantly appeared, causing the temperature on the second floor of the Noodle King restaurant to drop by a lot. A dazzling and exquisite 8-petal snow lotus, which seemed to be made of ice, appeared. When the snow lotus appeared, everyone's eyes shrank, and they exclaimed in surprise. 8-petal snow lotus. It was actually an 8-petal snow lotus. This was an extremely high-grade medicinal ingredient, which was almost equivalent to a divine herb. No one would have thought that Yin Yu would actually take out such an ingredient. Ouyang Chinfeng and the rest widened their eyes, feeling a little incredulous once this ingredient appeared. Unless Bu Feng took out the Tout Ye's meat, he would not have any chance of winning. However, Bu Feng was restricted from using the Tout Ye's meat. This Yin Yu is really despicable. He did not allow Bu Feng to use the Tout Ye's meat, but he used the 8-petal snow lotus, which was almost a divine herb. It seemed like Bu Feng was really going to lose this chef's challenge. Bu Feng's undefeatable legend was about to end. Chapter 774. The 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus was so beautiful. It was so beautiful that it attracted everyone's eyes, and they couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Floating in the air, the lotus petals were as thin as a cicada's wings. They gently fluttered, and the patterns on the petals looked like they were drawing an exquisite painting. It was incomparably beautiful. As the flower swayed, a dense spiritual energy was emitted. It was accompanied by a cold air, causing everyone to feel their skin tighten slightly. It was a spirit herb that was close to a divine herb. Did Yin Yu want to use this spirit herb to cook his next dish? Everybody took a deep breath as they thought about it. Indeed, a chef's challenge was where they could see a chef's true skills. Because no chef could bear the consequences of a chef's challenge. A divine herb was an extremely precious existence. Even in the royal court's holy land, it was hard to cultivate a divine herb. That was because a true divine herb needed time to grow. This 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus in front of them represented 8,000 years of age. One petal represented 1,000 years of age, and 8 petals meant that this spirit herb had reached 8,000 years of age. It was almost at the level of a 10,000-year divine herb. Could a spirit herb be cooked? Of course it could be cooked. Not only could it be cooked, but the higher the level of a chef, the higher the requirement for ingredients. Spirit herbs were also an ingredient that they had to consider. Dishes cooked with good spirit herbs would be really delicious, and they would have earth-shattering healing effects. I have this 8,000-year 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus. You can't use the tout as meat. How are you going to defeat me? Yin Yu was so meticulous as he held the 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus in his hand. Everybody took in a breath of cold air. Indeed, Yin Yu was right. Without the white tout as meat that was close to the divine spirit realm, how could Bu Fong defeat his opponent? Many people felt sorry for Bu Fong, and they felt aggrieved for Bu Fong, because they knew that Bu Fong had been tricked by Yin Yu. Yin Yu knew that Bu Fong had the tout as meat, but he forbade Bu Fong from using it. And Bu Fong didn't know that Yin Yu also had an ingredient of the same level. That was why he was tricked. Yin Yu was very clear about Bu Fong's trump card, but Bu Fong knew nothing about Yin Yu. Their chef's challenge was not on equal footing at all. Bu Fong withdrew his gaze from the 8-petal snow lotus, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Then he raised his hands, put his palms together, and lightly clapped them together. Whoosh! A ray of golden light instantly shuttled over and landed on Bu Fong's shoulder. Shrimpy was spitting bubbles, and its eyes were rolling around. This, looking at Xiaopi, who was lying on Bu Fong's shoulder, everyone was stunned. Could it be that Bu Fong was planning to cook this golden mantis shrimp that he was raising? The golden mantis shrimp was very strong and intelligent. Maybe it could fight against the 8-petal snow lotus. However, could Bu Fong really do it? In the distance, Great White, who was watching the chef's challenge with interest, saw the shrimp ancestor jump out. His hair stood on end. No, his skin exploded. His eyes widened, filled with disbelief. What did that kid want to do? Did he want to cook the shrimp ancestor? That was the shrimp ancestor, an overlord-level existence that swept through the endless sea region in the past. How could it be treated as an ingredient like this? He, Great White, still needed to hug the shrimp ancestor's thigh to ascend to the heavens. If the shrimp ancestor was cooked, what would happen to him? They had agreed to conquer the endless sea together, but he secretly became someone else's ingredient. At this moment, Great White's heart trembled. He roared, his face ferocious. He opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of sawtooth-like teeth. No, it can't be used as an ingredient. Great White roared hoarsely, tears flowing from his eyes. Xiao Bai's gray eyes flashed. His fan-like hands grabbed Great White's clothes, dragging him away. Great White's hand swayed, his face filled with reluctance. It was as though he was going to be separated by life and death. Bu Fong was a little speechless as he looked at Great White, who was trying to put on a show for him. How did this guy know that he was going to kill Shrimpy? How could this guy be so shallow? Could it be that Xiaopi could only be eaten? Bu Fong reached out his hand, rubbing Xiaopi's head as the corners of his mouth rose. Xiaopi comfortably narrowed its eyes. Feeling Bu Fong's touch, the bubbles coming out of its mouth increased. You have the 8-petal snow lotus, and I have the golden shrimpy. It's hard to say who will win, Bu Fong said calmly after looking at Yin Yu. Yin Yu's eyes narrowed. This guy really wanted to use the shrimpy as an ingredient? It seemed like he had misjudged this kid. His heart was really ruthless. Bu Fong was too lazy to talk to Yin Yu. He patted Xiaopi's head, then turned around and returned to the stove. On the tree outside the Noodle King restaurant, there were experts standing. Wenren Shang, Mu Chung, and Lu Jelly were all leaning on the tree, watching the Noodle King restaurant's chef's challenge. Wenren Shang, who do you think will win this chef's challenge? Mu Cheng's beautiful eyes turned, landing on Wenren Shang, who was holding a bamboo tube and pouring wine into his mouth. Bufong. Even if you think with your toes, you know that Yin that idiot, thinks that he can win with an 8-petal snow lotus? He's too young, Wenren Shang said. Mu Cheng rolled her eyes. Wenren Shang was really confident in Bufong. Old Lu, what do you think? Mu Cheng turned her head to look at Lu Jieli, who had a solemn face. Lu Jieli leaned against the tree, holding a book in his hand, slowly flipping through it. Facing Mu Cheng's question, he casually flipped a page and said, if Bufong can use the Tao Ye's meat, then Bufong's chances of winning will reach 65%. However, since Bufong is restricted from using the Tao Ye's meat, then Bufong's chances of winning will reach 80%. After Mu Cheng heard that, she was slightly stunned. Why did his chances of winning increase? Did you forget that Bufong still has the Tao Ye's heart in his hand? Even if he uses a small piece of the Tao Ye's heart, Bufong will still win. Lu Jieli closed the book in his hand and said, so what we should be concerned about now is after Bufong defeats Yin, who will he choose next? Mu Cheng furrowed her brows. That's right, there's still the Tao Ye's heart. However, Mu Cheng still felt that Bufong would not use the Tao Ye's heart. Although she did not know the reason, that was what she thought. Perhaps this was the so-called woman's intuition. Oh, the chef's challenge has begun. Watch carefully. Who knows, you might be able to find that kid's weakness. Wenren Shang chuckled and drank a mouthful of wine. He glanced at Mu Cheng and Lu Jieli. The two of them nodded and watched the chef's challenge in the Noodle King restaurant seriously. Swish, and he took in a deep breath. He took out a bag of flour, and the shadow, chopping knife sliced through it, tearing it apart. The shining white flour fluttered in the air, bringing with it a dense fragrance. There was also the vibration of spirit energy. The quality of this flour was very good. Just by looking at its snow-white color, it was enough to tell. In order to make dumplings, there were two main points. One was the dumpling skin, and the other was the dumpling filling. These two were equally important. The dumpling skin determined the texture, while the dumpling filling determined the taste. Sizzle. Yin flipped his hand, and a light blue spirit beast egg appeared in his hand. The spirit beast egg flickered with lightning arcs, emitting waves of energy. Coldly smiling at Bufong, Yin suddenly exerted force in his palm, and the light blue spirit beast egg was tossed into the air. The shadow chopping knife rapidly slashed down, instantly cutting the spirit beast egg into two halves. With a cracking sound, the egg liquid flowed down, landing on the flour that Yin had prepared. On the shadow chopping knife, the egg yolk, which was flickering with lightning arcs, was separated and placed into a bowl. Yin began to knead the dough. His kneading technique was very unique. It was obvious that he had done some serious research. Every time he kneaded, the flour would emit a faint rumbling sound. It was like the sound of raging waves crashing against the shore. This sound crashed into people's hearts, causing them to feel shocked. This kneading technique was indeed very shocking. Moreover, the dough that was kneaded in this way was very compact. Moreover, it would fuse the spirit energy of the flour and the egg liquid together. On the other side, Bufong also began to leisurely make the dumpling wrappers. The flour he wanted was from Ouyang Chenfeng. As the king of noodles, Ouyang Chenfeng naturally had top-notch flour in his store. The pure white and fragrant flour made Bufong very satisfied. He took out a blue and white porcelain bowl and filled it half to the brim with heavenly mountain spirit spring water. The spirit spring water was incomparably clear, and spiritual energy lingered around it. Of course, Bufong wouldn't start kneading the dough just like that. He didn't choose to add egg white like Yinyu. Instead, he directly used water to knead the dough. He took out a purple crystal jar, removed the lid, and dripped a drop of dense crystal source purple essence into the heavenly mountain spirit spring water. Once the crystal source purple essence entered the water, it seductively spread out and quickly fused with the water, causing the heavenly mountain spirit spring water to be filled with dense spiritual energy. Yu's eyes already lit up. She stared at the crystal source purple essence that Bufong put away. She stuck out her rosy tongue and licked her plump red lips. She looked extremely charming. Hades' eyes also lit up. Crystal Source Purple Essence. This was a delicious item. He didn't expect that a youngster like Bufong would actually have such an item. Bufong's expression was calm as he put away the Crystal Source Purple Essence. Then he took out the Frost Blaze Path Understanding Brew and poured some of it into it. The rich wine fragrance fused with the heavenly mountain spirit spring water. In the end, everyone looked over. The bowl of clear water was still as clear as ever. However, the difference was that there was actually a faint brilliance blossoming from the water. Bufong piled up the flour and dug a hole in the middle. He poured the heavenly mountain spirit spring water into the hole, covered it with flour, and started kneading. Bufong's kneading technique wasn't ordinary. His face was expressionless and indifferent as he kneaded the flour, as if he was playing Tai Chi toward the end. Bufong suddenly exerted force in his palm, and true energy gushed out. The dough flew up and quickly rotated, turning into a ball. As the ball rotated, it emitted a tearing sound. Bufong gently pulled out his palm and struck the ball. His true energy unceasingly poured into the ball. This caused the ball to swell up. The ball of dough rotated, becoming bigger and bigger. Everyone widened their eyes in shock as they looked at this scene. Why were the two of them kneading the dough as if they were performing acrobatics? All of a sudden, Bufong's gaze became sharp. He spread out his 5 fingers and grabbed the ball. His 5 fingers sank deep into it, causing the ball to shrink in an instant and gather in Bufong's hand. Bufong pulled with both of his hands, and the dough was stretched. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun, and a knife light flashed as it rapidly chopped down. The dough was cut into small pieces and landed on the stove. This series of movements was as smooth as flowing water, causing many people to be dazzled. The corner of Yin Yu's mouth twitched, and he coldly smiled. Beautiful to win favor. In the next instant, he placed the kneaded dough to the side and began to prepare the ingredients. Next was the real key, and that was the dumpling filling. Yin Yu might not be able to win against Bufong on the dumpling skin. However, the dumpling filling depended on the ingredients. As long as the ingredients were good enough, Bufong would definitely lose. Yin Yu's fiery gaze turned to the floating 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus. He resisted the urge to roar. Then, with a spin of the shadow, slicing kitchen knife, the snow lotus was cut into 2 halves. In an instant, dense spirit energy gushed out. It spread throughout the entire place. Chapter 775. The shadow chopping knife was fast and could cut shadows. The 2 sides of the knife had different colors. When it was swung at high speed, it seemed to disappear, which was very helpful in increasing the speed of the knife. This kitchen knife was a famous knife. It was because of this knife that Yin Yu was able to stand out on the tablet of gluttony and defeat many opponents. Although a big factor was that his opponents did not use their full strength, this famous knife could make Yin Yu's cooking skills so much more profound. It was enough to show how important a good knife was to a chef. The 8-petal ice crystal snow lotus was filled with spiritual energy. Yin Yu held it in his hand. Looking at the dazzling snow lotus, Yin Yu's eyes became a little dazed. This snow lotus was something he had paid a huge price to find. Because he had immersed himself in cooking, Yin Yu gradually fell in love with cooking. When it came to good ingredients, he would also show a fanatical look. This was completely different from his personality when he was in the ancient Jade Holy Land. Perhaps Yin Yu did not have any feelings for the Valley of Gluttony, but he absolutely loved cooking, because he had already been fascinated by cooking. Today's chef's challenge was a chance for him, but it was also a chance to prove himself. Didn't Bufong defeat so many chefs from the top 10 of the Tablet of Gluttony in a chef's challenge? If he could defeat Bufong, it would prove that he was not a fake. His identity as a special grade chef was real. Hence, he was excited. He was so excited that the blood in his body was slightly boiling. The knife light seemed to disappear without a trace, cutting through the air in an instant. 8 lotus petals quietly floated down, landing on the jade plate, that Yin Yu had prepared. These 8 lotus petals left the lotus pod and floated lightly. They were like pieces of ice that were as thin as paper about to melt. Yin Yu's true energy was like silk, winding out, protecting the 8 petals that were as thin as a cicada's wings. The kitchen knife in his hand began to deal with the lotus pod. The knife light was shadowless. As it cut through, the milky white lotus pod seemed to be cut into pieces in an instant. A white liquid flowed out of it. Yin Yu's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He took a jade bowl and kept the liquid that flowed out of the lotus. A rich fragrance was emitted from the milky white liquid, bringing along a tranquil fragrance. As the fragrance lingered, it was as smooth as silk, causing one's body and mind to involuntarily relax. This milky white juice that exuded a faint fragrance was the essence of this 8,000-year-old spirit herb. The essence seemed to be faintly glowing. People couldn't help but cast sidelong glances at him. Yin Yu's face revealed an intoxicated expression. He took the 8 lotus petals and carefully placed them on the edge of the jade bowl. In the next moment, the lotus petals seemed to come to life and began to absorb the milky white juice in the jade bowl. Taking advantage of this time, Yin Yu began to make the dumpling filling. He took out a lot of ingredients, and the grade of these ingredients were not low. Even though there weren't any ingredients as high grade as the 8-petal snow lotus, many of these ingredients were already very rare and top-notch among ordinary ingredients. This time, the shadow chopping knife completely exploded with Yin Yu's knife skills. Everyone could barely see the blade of the knife. All they could see was that when Yin Yu waved the kitchen knife, there would be knife light shooting out from time to time. In an instant, the ingredients were cut into pieces. The spirit beast meat, spirit herbs, and other bits were mixed together, and the color was incomparably resplendent. He added some ice cubes and stirred it. At this time, Yin Yu finally had the mood to raise his head and look in the direction of Bufang. He was also very curious about what kind of ingredient Bufang would take out to deal with his 8-petal snow lotus. All of a sudden, everyone was stunned. This was because Bufang took out different ingredients from the system's dimensional storage. These ingredients gave him a huge shock. The grade of these ingredients was not low, but compared to Yin Yu's ingredients, they were not much better. Moreover, Bufang did not have an ingredient that could compete with the 8-petal snow lotus. Everyone was a little disappointed, and some people even shook their heads regretfully. Indeed, without using the Taotai meat, Bufang would lose without a doubt. How could ordinary ingredients defeat Yin Yu's 8-petal snow lotus? However, besides the ordinary onlookers, there were many chefs on the tablet of gluttony. Ordinary people could not see what was so special about Bufang's ingredients, but these chefs could see through the mystery with a glance. There were ingredients that flew in the sky, walked on the ground, and swam in the water. Almost all kinds of ingredients were prepared. With so many different kinds of ingredients mixed together, it was a huge test for the chef. This was because once the coordination was not good, the taste of the entire dish would be out of balance. Outside the window, Mu Chung, who was standing on a tree, instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. This Bufang really is guts. He really dares to cook like that. Wenren Shang, on the other hand, chuckled and said, "It's normal. This kid's innate talent is unparalleled. His creativity is something that you and I can't compete with. Also his guts. That kind of indomitable courage is what I admire the most about him. I can feel." Wenren Shang gulped down a mouthful of wine. Wenren Shang gulped down a mouthful of wine. Gulp, gulp. The wine flowed down his throat. Swish, after drinking to his heart's content, Wenren Shang suddenly exhaled, and the wine splashed everywhere. He could not help but laugh loudly. "What can you feel?" Mu Chung looked at the strange Wenren Shang and asked. Yin Yu wiped his mouth, gently exhaling a breath that reeked of wine. "I can feel that this kid's goal is the sea of stars." Hearing this, Mu Chung instantly rolled her eyes. Lu Jieli's face was solemn as he gently caressed the book in his hand. If it's really like that, then his chances of winning in this chef's challenge will increase a little. Hearing this, Mu Chung rolled her eyes again. All kinds of ingredients had been prepared. Bufong's eyes flashed with a bright light. These ingredients were very rich, so rich that ordinary chefs did not dare to easily touch them. To make dumpling fillings, he definitely needed to mix so many ingredients together. There was a strict requirement for the taste and texture of each ingredient. Once the mixing failed, the entire dish would be ruined. Bufong could not fail. Hence, this challenge was incomparably huge for him. Many tactful chefs sucked in a deep breath, solemnly watching this scene. Of course, to the audience, they only had eyes for the dazzling array of ingredients. The fact that Bufong had to process so many ingredients was simply too awesome. Green smoke twirled around his hand. Bufong raised the black turtle constellation wok, took a step back, and then opened his mouth. A bundle of gold, mixed with red flames, sprang out. In an instant, the spirit spring water in the black turtle constellation wok began to boil. When the water in the wok was boiling, Bufong's eyes narrowed. Then, he turned his head to look at Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder and spitting out bubbles. Xiaopi was spitting out bubbles when Bufong suddenly lifted him up. "Be good. Go inside and take a bath. Do as you please." Bufong lifted Xiaopi, reaching out his hand to rub Xiaopi's head as he gently said this. Xiaopi's straight, compound eyes rolled around. Before it knew what had happened, Bufong's hand loosened. Then, Xiaopi's figure appeared to be free-falling, smashing into the steaming black turtle constellation wok. With a plop, water splashed everywhere. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Oh my God, that pitiful mantis shrimp was really cooked. In the distance, Great White, who was being pulled away by Xiao Bai, suddenly let out a hoarse cry. Both of his hands scratched the ground, causing crushed stones to fly everywhere. Smoke and dust filled the air. "Shrimp ancestor, you promised to be my companion in the world of mortals. You can't abandon your cute little shark." Xiao Bai's gray eyes twinkled. Then he swung the red-hot war god stick, hitting the back of Great White's head, knocking him out, directly dragging him away. Those who added scenes without permission were knocked out and dragged away. Naturally, Bufong didn't care about Great White, who added scenes without permission. Would Xiaopi be burned to death by the boiling water? As long as the abyssal chili sauce wasn't added to the boiling water, Xiaopi wouldn't have any reaction. The higher the temperature, the more comfortable this fellow's bath was. Moreover, the golden energy on his body became denser. Green smoke twirled around his hand. A moment later, the pitch-black dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bufong's hand. The muscles in his palm twitched, and the dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand. After twirling the knife, he flicked it, sending the ingredients flying. Then it was time for Bufong to show off his knife skills. With the meteor knife technique at the top level and the Overlord 13 Blade's 9th blade, Bufong's knife skills were enough to crush everyone in the Valley of Gluttony. Everybody was dazzled as they watched the knife in Bufong's hand danced. Countless ingredients were cut into pieces, and with a swishing sound, they were thrown into the wok. A spirit beast bird was pressed under Bufong's knife. The knife slashed horizontally, and with a ripping sound, the spirit beast meat was separated from its bones. A plump fish was also processed. As the fish scales fluttered, the fish bones were separated from the meat. In front of everybody's dumbfounded eyes, countless knife lights appeared like shooting stars, cutting all the ingredients into pieces. Thump, thump, thump. Countless ingredients fell into the black turtle constellation wok. It was as if it was raining. Xiaopi's numerous legs slid around in the black turtle constellation wok, and its compound eyes rolled around. It swam around comfortably, and sometimes it would flip 360 degrees. It looked like it was having fun, and its long tentacles swayed slightly. Apparently, it was very happy in its heart. Specks of golden energy dissipated from it and were absorbed by the ingredient. After a long time, Bufong's hand shook, and he fished up all the ingredients. These ingredients had been soaked in water, and they were cooked a little. Moreover, with the energy on Xiaopi's body, they became dazzling and dazzling. The others didn't understand the mysteries. But how could Bu Fong not understand? Taking a big bowl, he mixed all the ingredients together, then began to stir. He took out a spirit beast egg that was the size of 2 fists. There were light green spots on the spirit beast eggshell. The back of the kitchen knife lightly knocked against the eggshell, and the eggshell was broken. The true energy in Bu Fong's hand revolved, and the egg inside the eggshell was evenly beaten. Then he poured the egg evenly onto the dumpling filling, stirring it again. In the distance, Yin had also finished making the dumpling filling. The 8-petal snow lotus was mixed into the dumpling filling, causing the dumpling filling to emit a dazzling radiance, dazzling and eye-catching. Compared to Bu Fong's incomparably ordinary dumpling filling, the corners of Yin Yu's mouth curled up, brimming with confidence. Without a top-notch ingredient like the 8-petal snow lotus, brat, you're just a piece of trash. The corners of Yin Yu's mouth revealed a cold smile. In the next instant, he took the dough, and with a twist of his palm, it turned into plump dumpling wrappers. Yin Yu raised his head, smiling evilly. The wrapping of the dumplings was completed in an instant, and 12 evenly distributed folds appeared on the surface of the dumpling. In the distance, Bu Fong also began to meticulously wrap the dumpling filling. Everyone held their breaths. The chef's challenge seemed to be entering the final stage. Chapter 776. Making dumplings was not a difficult task for Bu Fong and Yin Yu. Their movements were extremely skilled. However, compared to Yin Yu's movements, Bu Fong's movements were more methodical. Bu Fong's movements were not fast, but it was pleasing to the eyes. It was as though he was making a piece of art. It was filled with calmness. On the other hand, Yin Yu was completely different. His movements were like a performance. That gorgeous and dazzling movement caused many people to sigh in admiration. As time passed, the number of dumplings the two of them made increased. Yin Yu's gaze occasionally lifted up. His hands did not slow down as he looked at Bu Fong with a playful and cold smile. With a move of his hands, the 12 pleated dumplings were completely wrapped by him. Bu Fong's dumplings were the traditional crescent moon dumplings. The dumplings were as exquisite and elegant as the crescent moon. Although it did not look very shocking, the kind of exquisite beauty was very enjoyable. When Bu Fong finished wrapping the last dumpling and placed it on the porcelain plate, Yin Yu had already cupped his fists and calmly looked at Bu Fong. In front of Yin Yu, many dumplings were arranged neatly like a blooming flower. It was extremely dazzling and mesmerizing. On the other side, he had already set up the wok. Flames spurted out, burning fiercely under the wok. As a special grade chef of the Valley of Gluttony, Yin Yu's cooking utensils were naturally not ordinary. That wok was also not ordinary. It was made of precious materials and could accurately conduct the temperature of the flames, as well as give feedback to the ingredients. The hot water in the wok was boiling, and the gurgling steam rushed up to the sky. It was misty, and it attacked people's eyes. That steam hit their faces, bringing with it a slightly sweet taste. When the temperature was just right, Yin Yu took out a row of steamers. This steamer was not big, but it was made of very exquisite materials. The material seemed to be emitting a sparkling radiance, as though it was flickering like the stars. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, looking at the steamer in disbelief. A steamer that was emitting starlight. Without a doubt, the material used to make the steamer was starlight bamboo. Starlight bamboo was extremely precious, and this Yin Yu actually used it to make a steamer. It was indeed a big deal. Yin Yu placed the dumplings into the steamer basket one by one. The bottom of the steamer basket was covered with a layer of fragrant spirit herb leaves. The lush spirit herb leaves were glistening with a bright light. After placing all the dumplings into the 9-layered starlight bamboo steamer, Bu Fong placed them into the pot and began to steam. After doing all this, Yin Yu took a step back and let out a long sigh of relief. Although he had been very confident, he didn't dare to be careless when it came to Bu Fong. This chef's challenge was related to his future. If he failed, Chu Changsheng would kill him immediately. If he won, with his understanding of Chu Changsheng, the other would definitely let him leave unscathed. Hence, no matter what, he had to win this chef challenge. Moreover, losing to a little chef like Bufong, Yin would also feel that he had lost all his face. He wasn't Ouyang Chunfeng or the others. He was Yin Yu, the special grade chef who ranked first on the tablet of gluttony. His pride was something that Ouyang Chunfeng and the others could not understand, because they were not at the same level as him. Only by steaming the dumplings could he maintain the original flavor of the dumpling filling. Only then could the 8-petal snow lotus taste be fully displayed. Of course, Yin Yu also liked to use steamed dumplings. As for other methods of cooking dumplings, he didn't dare to agree. Taking out a white porcelain bowl, Yin Yu started to prepare the sauce while he was steaming the dumplings. When eating dumplings, one naturally needed sauce. Dipping the dumplings in the sauce would definitely increase the taste of the dumplings to another level. Therefore, to Yin Yu, the sauce was indispensable. However, how to prepare a good sauce was also a problem. To Yin Yu, this so-called problem wasn't a problem at all. Taking out a huge porcelain jar, he opened the lid of the jar. Instantly, a thick vinegar aroma wafted out. Everyone's eyes slightly lit up, and they couldn't help but take in a deep breath. This vinegar aroma wasn't pungent, but it was very alluring. Obviously, this vinegar wasn't ordinary. Yin Yu carefully went to a bamboo tube and scooped out half a spoon of vinegar from the jar. The color of this vinegar was dark brown. It was incomparably clear and didn't have any impurities. With a sniff, the sour smell instantly filled the air, causing everyone's taste buds to be instantly enveloped by the vinegar. It was so sour that the roots of one's teeth became a little soft. He poured the vinegar into the white jade bowl. Yin Yu carefully put away the vinegar. Then, he added the other seasonings into the white jade bowl. Of course, the vinegar was the main seasoning. Then, he added some spicy seasonings, causing the taste of the sauce to become even more fiery. After the sauce was prepared, it was placed to the side. Yin Yu's gaze landed on the steamer. Within the steamer, steam had already started to surge out. The fragrance of the dumplings finally slowly spread out. The entire Noodle King restaurant was instantly enveloped by this fragrance. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their noses, greedily sniffing the fragrance that filled the air. Within this fragrance, there was an irresistible ice-cold aura. That was the smell of the snow lotus. That was an ingredient that was close to a divine medicine. Sizzle, sizzle. However, just as everyone was immersed in the fragrance that was spreading out from the steamer, the sound of the dumplings entering the wok rang out in an instant. Everyone's intoxicated mood was broken, and they couldn't help but turn their gazes toward the direction where the sound came from. Everyone was dumbfounded because they realized that Bufong had actually placed the dumplings into the wok and deep-fried them. Xiaopi's entire body was emitting steam. He lazily laid on Bufong's shoulder, spitting out bubbles from his mouth. The Black Turtle constellation wok was filled with oil. A few pieces of dumplings were thrown into the wok by Bufong and started to deep fry. In just an instant, the dumplings started to churn and white bubbles rapidly rolled out. The dumpling skin turned murky yellow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bufong held a long pair of chopsticks in his hand. In the Noodle King restaurant, there were many chopsticks like this. The chopsticks entered the wok of oil and quickly flipped. Bufong's gaze focused on the dumplings in the wok. Then, in the next instant, he fiercely flicked it. That dumpling, steaming hot, flew out and landed on the porcelain plate. On the surface, there were still bubbles bursting. Everyone's eyes widened. They looked at Bufong with incomparable shock. Bufong actually wanted to deep-fry dumplings? Although deep-fried dumplings were good, it would lose the soft and smooth texture of the dumpling skin. Originally, he was already at a disadvantage in terms of ingredients. Now, he even wanted to deep-fry the dumplings. The only thing that could compete with Yin Yu was gone. That was a sure loss. Many people's hearts sank. When they saw that Bufong actually chose to deep-fry dumplings, they were a little silent. Their gazes were a little complicated. Outside the window, Mu Chung and the others all furrowed their brows. They seemed to be a little puzzled as they looked at this scene. They didn't understand why Bu Fong would choose to deep-fried dumplings. This was a completely suicidal choice. When Yin Yu saw that Bu Fong was making deep-fried dumplings, his eyes instantly emitted a bright light. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing an excited smile. "Idiot! You want to use deep-fried dumplings to win against me?" Yin Yu revealed a cold smile. In the next instant, his palm fiercely patted the steamer basket. True energy surged up, instantly filling the steamer basket. With a buzzing sound within the steamer basket, hot steam billowed, spreading out from the cracks of the steamer basket. All of a sudden, the entire audience once again burst into an uproar. Yin Yu was stunned, raising his head. Suddenly looking over, his eyes instantly shrank, because he realized that Bu Fong had changed again. This time, it was actually dry-dredged dumplings. What was going on? What did this kid want to do? Could it be that he wanted to cook all the dumplings? And as if confirming his guess, Bu Fong's next action completely caused an uproar. Because Bu Fong really cooked the dumplings in different ways, the fragrance surged, and the fried dumplings were out of the pot. The steamer basket was set up, and the dumplings were steamed. All kinds of dumplings were cooked by Bu Fong, placed on the stove. What kind of trick was this? At this moment, everyone became a little confused and puzzled. Everyone was a little confused by Bu Fong's cooking method. Those who originally thought that they had seen through Bu Fong were stunned. Cooking so many kinds of dumplings. Was Bu Fong going to make a big mess of dumplings? Bu Fong's hand turned. Instantly, a huge round blue and white porcelain plate appeared in his hand. That blue and white porcelain plate had blue and white intertwined, looking very plump. He placed the cooked dumplings on the plate. Fried dumplings in one position, fried dumplings in another position, dry-dredged dumplings in another position, steamed dumplings in another position. Yin Yu's eyes finally shrank, feeling a trace of seriousness. However, at this moment, he no longer had the mood to care about Bu Fong. His palm fiercely patted the steamer basket. Instantly, true energy surged out, and the steam surging out of the steamer basket gradually converged. Yin Yu moved the 9-layer steamer basket out of the hot pot. At this moment, everyone held their breath, staring at the 9-layer steamer basket. Bu Fong also took out the dumplings from the steamer basket, placing them on the stove. He placed the steamed dumplings on the blue and white porcelain plate. That porcelain plate was like a blooming flower. In the middle, there was a circle. That was where the sauce was placed. When eating dumplings, of course, there must be sauce. This point, whether it was Yin Yu or Bu Fong, both agreed. Eating dumplings with sauce would definitely have a different taste. As for the sauce, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose. Then, with a shake of his hand, he took out the abyssal chili sauce. He scooped up a spoonful, poured it into the porcelain plate, and began to mix the sauce. What else was more suitable than the abyssal chili sauce to make a sauce? The kind of spicy to the point of exploding, spicy to the point of burning desire, spicy to the point of causing people to doubt the world, was extremely enjoyable. With the addition of Xiaopi's bathwater. No, Xiaopi's energy released into the spirit soup. The sauce would definitely be perfect. Slightly shaking the porcelain bowl, the black-red sauce in the bowl emitted a wave of tempting fragrance, giving people a feeling of exploring to the bottom. Pouring the sauce into the center of the blue and white porcelain plate, a splashing sound rang out. Then, Bu Fong finished his dish. Buzz steam rose from each type of dumpling, suddenly gathering above the porcelain plate. In the next instant, the steam above the porcelain plate actually changed, actually turning into the appearance of all kinds of spirit beasts. There were those that flew in the sky, those that walked on the ground, those that swam in the water. There was everything that one could think of. In the end, the entire dish emitted a sparkling radiance, the steam crisscrossing. It was too beautiful to behold. Bu Fong took off the velvet rope that tied his hair, and his hair broke free, scattering like a waterfall. Slightly raising his eyes, he looked at Yin Yu, who had also finished filling the plate, and calmly said, "For Division's crescent moon dumplings." "Done." Yin Yu also rubbed his hand, and a rich fragrance gushed out, accompanied by rolling steam. He grinned, coldly saying, "Snow lotus crystal dumplings. Done." Chapter 777. 4 Divisions Crescent Moon Dumplings. Using 4 different cooking methods and 4 different ingredients. The dumplings were made from 4 different ingredients: flying in the sky, running on the ground, swimming in the water, and growing in the soil. Only now did the audience realize that Bu Fong's choice of ingredients had a purpose. It was a very creative dish, and after understanding the truth of the matter, many people were suddenly enlightened. Outside the window, Mu Chung and the others were also shocked. They couldn't help but stretch their necks. Their eyes narrowed, and their faces revealed astonishment. 4 Divisions Crescent Moon Dumplings. It was really an extraordinary dish. Previously, they thought that Bu Fong wanted to use the method of frying dumplings. In the end, they realized that other than frying dumplings, Bu Fong had also chosen 3 other methods. The dumplings made in this way had all kinds of special characteristics, and it made people feel a lot of anticipation. Yin Yu's snow lotus crystal dumplings were also out of the oven. They were steaming hot, but it gave people a feeling of coldness. The dumplings looked as if they were made of ice crystals. The skin of the dumpling became transparent, and the filling inside emitted a radiance. It was extremely dazzling and mesmerizing. Under the sunlight, it was like a crystal emitting all kinds of radiance. It was extremely beautiful. Then it was paired with the sauce that the 2 of them had made. These 2 dishes were extremely shocking, and it made people look forward to it. Who would be the judges for this chef's challenge? Many people looked at each other, hesitating. They didn't know who would be the judge. However, this hesitation didn't last long, because everyone was eager to take action. Noodle King Ouyang Chenfeng would definitely take one of the seats, and the remaining 4 seats would be divided among the contestants. You didn't say anything, already sitting on the judge's seat. Xiaoya and Hua held hands, widening their big eyes as they sat on their seats. Naturally, the audience didn't dare to say anything. Now, everyone knew that Xiaoya would be the next Valley Master of the Valley of Gluttony. That was the Valley Master, who would be so free to provoke him. As for the last seat, a gloomy face appeared, quickly sitting on that seat. It occupied everyone's line of sight, occupying the last seat. Hades' Era covered his face with one hand, his hair spilling out through the gaps between his fingers. His expression was gloomy. Since everyone was being so modest, then he would not pass on the responsibility. Moreover, looking at the dumplings, they seemed delicious. Although they might not be as delicious as the spicy strips, it was still not bad to have a taste. Just like that, the judges were decided. Yin Yu's face darkened. Holy shit, this lineup of judges. What the F asterisk CK? Can't you be a little more fair? Could you be a little more friendly? Yin Yu's face darkened, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Luckily, although these judges were Bu Fong's people, Yin Yu believed that as long as his dishes were delicious enough, these people wouldn't dare to give random marks. Strength was everything. Bu Fong, who was wearing the vermilion robe, used a clean white cloth to wipe the edges of the blue and white porcelain plate. Then he single-handedly dragged the huge blue and white porcelain plate toward the judge's table. Yin Yu held the white jade plate in his hand with a gloomy expression. He coldly looked at Bu Fong. 4 Divisions Crescent Moon Dumplings. To think that this kid could think of using different ingredients and different cooking methods. Who knows, this kid might really overturn it. However, Yin Yu was still very confident in his heart. He believed that with the help of the 8-petal snow lotus, he would definitely be able to suppress his opponent's dish. This was the confidence that came from having top-notch ingredients. Yin Yu gently exhaled, and his eyes regained his confidence. He carried the dumplings to the judge's table. The crystal-like dumplings were extremely gorgeous. Once they appeared, they attracted everyone's gazes. Many people cried out in surprise. As expected of Special Chef Yin, this dish had inherited the style of his gorgeous dishes as always. The elegance of his dishes was not something that ordinary chefs could compare to. Take Bu Fong's 4 Divisions Crescent Moon Dumplings as a comparison. Although it looked very unique, Each of the dumplings was not gorgeous. They were all very ordinary. Compared to the crystal dumplings, they were completely inferior. At least in terms of appearance, they were much worse than the crystal dumplings. After Yin placed the dumplings in front of the judges, he smiled and elegantly took a step back. Snow Lotus Crystal Dumplings, please have a taste. This is a special chef's special sauce. When paired with the crystal dumplings, it will be even more delicious. Outside the window, Mu Chung and the others had also entered the Noodle King restaurant. They were also very curious about the taste of the dumplings. The sauce that Yin had made was light blue, and it looked very refreshing. It really brought out the best in the crystal dumplings. The appearance of the two dumplings has its own merits. Gorgeous, but not low-key. Cool, but not reserved. Ouyang Chinfeng nodded his head and commented. He rubbed his chin, then grabbed a pair of chopsticks and reached for the Snow Lotus Crystal Dumpling. The chopsticks grabbed the crystal dumpling, and with a slight force, the dumpling immediately trembled. Visually, one could feel the elasticity of the dumpling. This surprised Ouyang Chinfeng a little. After picking it up, the dumpling seemed to have juice flowing, and it gave off a slight trembling sound. Very unique. Ouyang Chinfeng's face became a little more serious. In the next instant, it was dipped in the light blue sauce. When the crystal dumpling was dipped in the light blue sauce, it looked very tempting, and it whetted one's appetite. Then, with a little bit of anticipation, he took a bite. The moment he bit down, Ouyang Chinfeng's eyes widened. His eyes were filled with disbelief. It was as if a ray of light had flashed across his mind. This texture, the moment the dumpling entered his mouth, the dumpling's skin was bitten through without any effort. After biting through it, the soup within the dumpling flowed out. An ice-cold feeling instantly spread on Ouyang Chinfeng's tongue. The elastic dumpling skin knocked against the walls of his mouth, giving him an incomparable enjoyment. The moment he bit into the dumpling filling, the steam rolled out, accompanied by the sauce's perfect sourness, causing Ouyang Chinfeng's lips to tremble. After the boiling hot dumpling filling burst forth, it quickly became ice-cold. This kind of ice-cold feeling made Ouyang Chinfeng feel as if he was experiencing the two heavens of ice and fire. Delicious. There was no doubt that it was delicious. Ouyang Chinfeng's eyes were incomparably complicated as he exclaimed in admiration. Although he looked down on Yinyu, he had to admit that this fellow's culinary skills were really good. This crystal dumpling had completely stunned him. Of course, when the 8-petal snow lotus was mixed into the dumpling, it contained incomparably surging spirit energy. After eating it, it made Ouyang Chinfeng feel as if his entire body had been baptized. The dumpling's fragrance and taste had been greatly improved. This was the effect of top-notch ingredients. It could make ordinary dishes have a crushing taste. After a dumpling entered his stomach, Ouyang Chinfeng exhaled slightly. His breath was ice-cold, and his face was full of satisfaction. This dumpling was really delicious. Yu's face was cold. She did not use chopsticks, and she was too lazy to use them anyway. She directly reached out and grabbed a dumpling. The dumpling was very smooth, and it was a little cold. However, amidst the coldness, you could feel an explosive feeling of pregnancy. After dipping the dumpling in the sauce, you stuffed the entire dumpling into her mouth, not at all behaving like a virtuous lady. Her eyebrows slightly twitched as she looked at Yinyu in surprise. As if feeling Yu's gaze, Yinyu's face revealed a gentle smile. He nodded at Yu and bowed slightly. After eating the dumpling, Yu did not say anything. A dish that could make her eat, it was obviously not bad, although it was still lacking compared to the dragon blood rice. Yu thought in her heart. Xiaoya and Hua, the two girls, opened their eyes wide. Xiaoya held the chopsticks, stood on her chair, and stood on her tiptoes. She picked up a dumpling, dipped it in the blue sauce, and stuffed it into her mouth. Everyone looked at Xiaoya's eating manner and felt worried for her. The dumpling filled her mouth, and it seemed as if it was a little difficult to chew. This was their future valley master of the Valley of Gluttony. She was just a glutton. However, when the dumpling entered her mouth, Xiao Ye's eyes instantly lit up, revealing a look of surprise. Her mouth bulged as she continuously nodded her head. Her mouth was mumbling something indistinctly. Hua also followed Xiao Ye's example and picked up a dumpling. As she ate, her triflower snake eyes turned and slightly brightened. It was Hades' Era's turn. Hades covered his face with one hand, and his face was filled with melancholy. He grabbed the chopsticks and began to draw on the dumpling. After picking up a dumpling, he hesitated for a moment before Hades' Era put the dumpling down and picked up another dumpling. Using his chopsticks, he picked up 2 dumplings, dipped them in the sauce, and stuffed them into his mouth. The sour taste spread, and the fragrance filled the air. Spirit energy surged, and a cold aura surged. Era's nostrils instantly widened, and his eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. "Oh, young man, you look stupid, but your culinary skills are not bad. This dumpling is very delicious, but it is still lacking compared to the spicy strips," Hades' Era said. The corner of Yin Yu's mouth twitched. "Spicy your sister. Who the hell knows what spicy strips are? Look at your confused eyes. You don't know what spicy strips are, right? Look, this is it," Hades' Era said. After saying that, he took out 2 pitch-black stones that looked like charcoal. He lightly knocked on them, and instantly, a banging sound resounded. Yin Yu looked at Hades' Era as if he was looking at an idiot. "When you say that, doesn't your conscience hurt? That's a F***king charcoal, saying that his dumplings are not comparable to a piece of charcoal." If he could defeat Hades' Era, Yin Yu would definitely roll up his sleeves and fight 300 rounds with Hades. "All right, we have finished tasting Special Chef Yan's dishes. Now, let's try Bu Feng's dishes," Ouyang Chunfeng hurriedly said. He felt that if he didn't say it now, Yin Yu would really fight with Hades' Era. Ouyang Chunfeng's words made everyone's eyes brighten. Finally, it was time to taste Owner Bu's 4 Divisions Crescent Moon dumplings. Everyone's face revealed a look of anticipation. Then, everyone's gaze turned to Bu Feng. Bu Feng's face was expressionless, as if he was stunned by everyone's gaze. He raised his hand and said, "4 Divisions Crescent Moon dumplings, please have a taste." As soon as he said that, the judges instantly exploded. Their chopsticks and hands moved toward the 4 Divisions Crescent Moon dumplings. Owner Bu's dishes were definitely worth looking forward to. Chapter 778. The judges' violent behavior scared the onlookers around them. They were dumbstruck as they looked at the group of people who looked like they were the reincarnations of starving ghosts. They looked at the dumplings on the blue and white porcelain plate, which were decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bu Feng was very calm. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at them with an expressionless face. Xiaopi was lying on his shoulder. The heat on her body had already dissipated. She was blowing bubbles, and her compound eyes were looking at the group of judges who looked like they were the reincarnations of starving ghosts. There seemed to be a flash of curiosity in her eyes. Bu Feng raised his hand, patting Xiaopi's head. Yu's movements were very fast. Because she used her hands instead of chopsticks, she grabbed the fried dumplings on the porcelain plate in an instant. The skin of the fried dumplings was crispy. Once it was in her hand, it was a little hot. You couldn't help but raise her brows. However, this little bit of heat was nothing to her, who craved delicious food. With an ah sound, the fried dumpling entered her mouth. Her red lips slightly parted, and her lips shone. The oil on the fried dumplings stained her lips, which made her look even more enchanting. Crunch, crunch. The crispy skin of the dumpling was bitten through. That kind of soft and crispy feeling made Yu's pitch-black eyes slightly shine. Her pearly white teeth bit down, instantly crushing the dumpling skin. In that instant, a wave of thick fragrance spread out in her mouth. This fragrance tickled her taste buds, causing all the pores on her body to shrink in that instant. A gust of wind blew. Nethery felt her whole body freeze on the spot. In an instant, the scene in front of her turned into a grassland. Thousands of green grass swayed in the wind. Among the grass, there were lush and tender leaves breaking out of the soil. Under the nourishment of the sweet dew, They grew strong and healthy. Without a doubt, what you ate was ingredients that grew in the soil. It was a kind of spirit herb that was full of vitality. Coupled with the right amount of water, after biting through the skin of the dumpling, the medicinal fragrance of the spirit herb and the dish burst out at the same time. Her nostrils slightly exhaled, as if there was a fragrance coming out of it. As expected, Bufang's dishes could bring her joy. You closed her eyes and continued chewing, her face slightly flushed. Xiaoya and Hua both grabbed the same type of dumpling. They were dry dumplings with plump skin and emitted hot steam. They looked rather plain. When you ate the fried dumplings, she forgot to dip in the sauce, but Hua and Xiaoya, these two brats, happily dipped the dumplings into the sauce that Bufang had prepared. In the next moment, she narrowed her eyes and stuffed them into her mouth. Xiaoya really liked eating Bufang's cooking because she felt that her big brother's cooking always made her feel happy. Xiaoya. He bit through the side of the dumpling that was dipped in the sauce. The plump skin of the dumpling that was as smooth as white jade was immediately bitten through, and the soup rolled out from within. It was incomparably hot, and it was still boiling and emitting scorching air. As soon as Xiaoya entered her mouth, she immediately gasped for air from the scalding heat. Her small face instantly flushed red, and tears almost flowed out of her eyes. Hot, hot, hot. Xiaoya was chewing as she chewed. As a seven-colored sky devouring python, Hua didn't mind the little bit of heat. Her mouth, which was covered in sauce, opened up into an exaggerated arc. Then, she stuffed the entire dumpling into her mouth. Slurp, slurp. Hua blinked his tri-flower snake eyes as he chewed. All of a sudden, as he was chewing, Hua's movements came to an abrupt halt. His mouth opened wide, and his eyes narrowed. Xiaoya's face was flushed red, and her mouth was open as she breathed. It was unclear whether it was because of the spiciness or the heat. She turned around and looked at Xiao Hua's expression. She couldn't stop giggling. Hua opened his mouth, exhaled, and continued chewing. His tri-flower snake eyes grew brighter and brighter. His hands didn't stop moving as he continued to extend his hand toward the dumpling. Xiaoya was immersed in the taste of the dumpling. The skin of the dumpling was as smooth as jade, but once it was bitten, the gravy inside gushed out, bringing with it a rich, fishy taste. The fishy taste wasn't fishy, and it wouldn't make people feel disgusted. Instead, it was a very enjoyable taste. Xiaoya closed her eyes, and a crystal tear rolled down from the corner of her eye. The little girl felt as though she had leaped up, turning into a fish with shining scales. With a splash, she dove into the water, unrestrained and carefree, riding the wind and breaking the waves in the sea. That kind of feeling was really very strange. Dried fish dumplings were really too delicious. Hades' nostrils flared, and his eyes were filled with extreme desire. He smelled a very familiar smell. That smell made all the hairs on his body stand on end. That was the smell of spicy strips. Hades' roared in his heart. He rushed out without a care for his own safety, unable to hide the surprise on his face. He grabbed the chopsticks and picked up a dumpling. He didn't know what kind of dumpling he had picked up. The dumpling was yellow on both sides, and it was a little flat. The fried surface was extremely crispy, and it emitted a rich fragrance. He had actually picked up a fried dumpling. However, that wasn't the focus of Hades' attention. His focus was on the abyssal chili sauce. Once his eyes saw the sauce, he couldn't move away anymore. In the next moment, he threw the whole fried dumpling into the bowl, dipping in the sauce. Then, he picked it up happily. The originally golden fried dumplings had already turned into red dumplings at this moment, completely stained by the dark red sauce. Taking a deep breath, Era's face was filled with fascination. This familiar recipe, this familiar smell. Indeed, it was the smell of spicy strips that I was familiar with. Holding the dumpling with one hand, Hades' raised his head. His mouth opened, swaying as he put the dark red fried dumpling into his mouth. His lips slightly parted, just enough to cover the dumpling. In the next moment, he went in and out, intoxicated. Everyone looked at Hades' eating manner, and their faces were dull. They didn't understand who had invited this clown. Who ate dumplings like that? As the dumpling went in and out, Hades' eyes became blurry. He felt the hot feeling of the abyssal chili sauce rubbing against his lips, making his pores open. With a smacking sound, he took out the fried dumpling. The sauce on it had been sucked clean. Hades' eyes brightened. He pinched the fried dumpling, intending to put it into the bowl of sauce. However, you, who had sharp eyes, slapped it away with a face full of disdain. The corners of everyone's mouth twitched, and they were somewhat speechless. Yin clenched his teeth in hatred. He was actually beaten black and blue by this idiot, and he actually dared not say anything in front of this idiot. How infuriating! Facing Yinyu's hateful gaze, Hades seemed to be moved. He pinched the fried dumpling, turned his head, and revealed a smile. In the next instant, under Yinyu's gaze, he stuffed the fried dumpling into his mouth. Yinyu was speechless. Again, was this guy really stupid? Who the hell eats dumplings for sucking? Suddenly, that dumpling was stuffed halfway into Hades' mouth. Hades' eyes lit up, and his teeth emitted a bright light. He fiercely bit down. Crack! That dumpling that was stuffed halfway was instantly bitten off. Oh! When Yinyu saw this scene, his lower body instantly shrank, and his whole body turned cold. Ouyang Chinfeng took in a deep breath. He was considered the one with the best table manners among all the judges. The dumpling he picked up was steamed, which was different from Yinyu's steamed dumplings that were like crystals. Bufang's steamed dumplings were standard. The dumpling skin was not thick, and one could almost see the filling inside. However, the other parts were as plump as jade. After picking up a steamed dumpling and dipped in the sauce, Ouyang Chinfeng elegantly took a bite. With one bite, the dumpling skin was bitten open, and a turbulent fragrance and heat instantly surged out from the dumpling. That kind of spicy taste, as if it was burning, instantly surged out, causing Ouyang Chinfeng's eyes to become misty. This kind of texture, this kind of taste, that soft dumpling skin, that soft and bouncy meat filling. After taking a bite, his mouth was filled with heat. Ouyang Chinfeng's eyes became misty, and he felt as if there was a pair of wings growing out of his back, as if he could fly to the sky. The filling of this steamed dumpling was actually made from the meat of birds that could fly in the sky. The texture was surprisingly good, and it made people unable to stop eating. Coupled with that spicy sauce, it was a kind of experience that he had never experienced before. It was as if he was flapping his wings and circling around the crater of a volcano, feeling the scalding heat after the volcano erupted. Ouyang Chinfeng felt as if he had already fallen. The expressions of the judges fell into everyone's eyes. The different kinds of fragrances that filled the air made everyone involuntarily take in a deep breath. This fragrance really smelled good. Mu Cheng and Lu Jili looked at each other. Wenren Shang's mouth was dripping with saliva, and he couldn't help but stare at the dumplings. He really wanted to snatch one and have a taste. It looked really too delicious. Is it really that delicious? Just smelling this fragrance makes you unable to stop eating. This dumpling is really too creative. Flying in the sky, walking on the ground, swimming in the water, and growing in the soil. All kinds of different ingredients, coupled with the excellent cooking methods, produced a delicious taste that will definitely make people fall in love. The surrounding people chattered noisily. They were all extremely envious, and they really wanted to try it. Yinyu's eyes shrank. Impossible. Impossible. His ingredients are so trashy. How could he make dumplings that are more delicious than my snow lotus crystal dumplings? Yinyu's face instantly became deathly pale. Then, he unwillingly took a step back and let out an angry roar. Bufang looked at Yinyu, who was on the verge of collapsing, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards. In the end, he was still too young. Good ingredients did not necessarily mean that he could cook a delicious dish. If the cooking method was not appropriate, the taste of the ingredients would also be lost. Yinyu didn't seem to understand this. Although the ingredients that Bufang had chosen were not very high grade, coupled with the excellent cooking method, the taste of the dumplings were enough to disregard the difference between the ingredients. Moreover, before cooking, Bufong had washed the ingredients in Shrimpy's bathwater. Oh no, the spirit water that was emitting energy. After being soaked in the bathwater that could improve the taste of the ingredients by several grades, the taste of the cooked dumplings would naturally be extraordinary. Slap! Slap! After the judges finished all the dumplings, they put down their chopsticks. Yinyu's face became deathly pale. His eyes shrank, and a frightened expression appeared on his face. According to this trend, he was afraid that he would lose. He couldn't lose. Once he lost, he would be killed by Chu Changsheng. He had used the ancient jade lock to deal with Chu Changsheng, and he had stabbed him when he was at his weakest. At that time, Chu Changsheng would definitely hold a grudge. Thus, he knew that if he lost the chef's challenge, he would die without a doubt. In order to ensure that he could win the chef's challenge, he even took out the 8-petal snow lotus. He couldn't lose. Ouyang Chunfeng opened his eyes. Yu, Xiaoya, and the others also looked at Bufong and Yinyu. The onlookers felt their hearts shiver. They knew that the winner of this chef's challenge was about to emerge. In the end, who would be the winner? Many people's hearts were filled with curiosity. In the distance, a figure wearing a long robe walked in the air. With each step, the illusionary void would tremble, like the sound of a morning bell ringing. It was Chu Changsheng, who had finished supervising the workers and rushed over. Chu Changsheng's face was solemn. His cold gaze shot out and landed on Yinyu, whose face was deathly pale. Yinyu raised his head and saw Chu Changsheng. His pupils shrank. Ouyang Chinfeng, Xiaoya, and the others used their mental energy to communicate for a while. In the end, they decided on the winner and loser. Ouyang Chinfeng coughed, turning his head to look at Bufong and Yinyu, saying in a low voice, "The final winner of this chef's challenge is, for division's crescent moon dumplings." As soon as he said that, the crowd became silent. Yinyu's eyes shrank, and he roared unwillingly. He looked at Bufong with hatred, then turned around and fled. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.